Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to a very exciting Captain Swiss stream. You can tell I'm excited. My hand would be shaking. Maybe it is shaking. I don't know. When I last spoke to you, we were doing local elections coverage, and I never quite got round to doing that wrap-up video for the full local elections results. And I put it off, and I put it off, and after a little while, there were more things I was going to add to it. And you know what I'm like at this point, if you've been watching the channel for long enough. But I was going to do it at some point. It was going to happen, much like those belated Milky Awards always. But events, dear boy, events. I was minutes away from finishing my shift at work today, and I walked into the big room at work where a bunch of staff were, and I just heard one of them go, "Oh, have you heard a general election's been called?" And genuinely, people looked at me. They were saying, "Oh, have you heard Rishi Sunak's called a general election for the 4th of July?" And I just went, "Oh!" like that. And I said, "Really?" Disappeared straight off to the staff room, got the form in the staff room to book holiday, went straight to the office, spoke to the manager, said, "I need to have the 5th of July off work so I can stay up all night and stream the general election results." And she has given me her cast iron assurance that that will be possible. So it's happening, boys and girls. We've got a general election. We're going to get into all of that very shortly. I've got lots of guests waiting in the wings that we're going to be chatting to. But I can tell you right now, cast iron guarantee, we will be streaming the general election on the night, on the channel, all night. I'll have my Weetabix. We'll be ready for it. It's going to be, it's our WrestleMania, boys and girls. It's our WrestleMania. So exciting stuff. I know. A quick hello to you lot in the chat. Charlie Simmons says, "Ole, ole, ole, ole. General election called Hallelujah. Political nerds unite." Hazza Khan says, "Hope you're well, Swiss. Nice to see you." Individual Envy, "Things can only get better." And Podge says, "Supcap, looking forward to the general election from Northern Ireland." Well, thank you to all of you guys for joining us. We've got 11 of you watching at the moment. I'm sure that number will increase as we go. So as I said, we've got lots of people waiting in the wings here. This is going to be a bit of a Captain Swiss channel reunion, us talking about all this today. So I'm just going to go in order of this list that I've got here in front of me. So our first guest we have here, allegedly, is Swiss Neutrality. Hello there.
Hello.
How are you? How? See, look, I'm too excited. I need to.
Yeah, this is the most enthusiastic I've seen you for anything in a good few years. I'd say that much.
Yes. Yeah, the short answer is yes. I rushed home from work. I rushed to the staff room to book my day off work to do the stream. I rushed home. I very quickly got ready to, and I was knackered after work. I've been there for 9 hours today, but I'm suddenly full of energy for this. Where were you when you heard the news, Tom?
Essentially in my living room watching the TV because I had heard pretty much since the day began that there was going to be a general election. It was rumored for quite a while, and when I first heard the rumors, I was like, rolled my eyes and was like, "Ugh, here we go again. The media hyping up a load of rumor mill nonsense." But then, as the days went on and the more verified sources started coming through, and the open refusal by the prime minister and the cabinet to deny a general election, which is what they always usually do with these things, the more I began to think, oh, this might actually have something to it. This might not just be another Westminster rumour mill thing.
Well,
And then eventually we got to about, I'd say, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, where it basically was just outright confirmed by multiple media sources who were all trustworthy. And so I was like, yeah, we're having one. So I had the TV on, waiting for it to happen, turned it on at 4:15, which is when they said they were having the cabinet meeting, and then just watched it. And then eventually we got to about 5:15, and then Sunak showed up. The Prime Minister gave the speech and he called it. And I was like, well, we're finally having a general election and a hell of a lot earlier than I thought we would.
Absolutely. Like you, I'd heard the rumor mill for a long time, but pretty much since the beginning of the year, there'd been vague speculation that could it be an early year election? Could it be a spring election? Could it be a summer election? Blah blah blah. But the conventional wisdom seemed to be, nah, it'll fall in the autumn. By and large, that's what most people were saying, and up until literally today, that's what I believed would happen as well.
I had the more
It's
pessimistic view that it would happen in January of next year. That's when
you
I thought it would have
you
been.
thought he'd cling on until the very end.
Yeah, I
Uh,
thought the absolute latest he could have held it before he held it now was the 28th of January 2025, and that's when I actually thought he would have called it because I had the assumption of there is no way they're going to win and they're going to do incredibly badly, so might as well just cling on for as long as possible because this might be the last time that you're in government until the 2030s. That's what I thought at least. But I also thought at the same time, if they were going to call it before then, it would have been between the period of September and November, probably October, with him calling it the day after the Tory conference. I'm really surprised he decided to hold it in the summer. I really didn't think he
yes,
would.
I'm surprised by it as well. And you know what, I could continue talking about this for literally hours, and I will, but I need to take a moment to start bringing in some of the other people into this as well, because we've got 4 other guests waiting in the wings, and then the first order of business is going to be we're going to watch this Rishi Sunak speech, which I've been told allegedly sounds like a resignation speech almost.
It does indeed, yes.
Effectively, it is, but there we are. Right then, so our next guest of the evening is Mr. John Cooper. Hello there, sir.
Hello, Swiss.
How are you feeling? Are you excited? Are you happy?
Oh, it's like a mix of excitement, mix of apathy, and a mix of a surprise, I guess.
Excitement and apathy are 2 very interesting emotions to have mixed there. So
Mhm.
you're buzzing for the general election, but at the same time, you're not set on fire by the
Yeah,
prospect of the Labour
it's
win.
like I'm always up for doing like canvassing and paying attention to general elections ever since 2016. But I will admit, for the first time, there's candidates that I'm not really all that enthusiastic about.
I see.
Starmer and Rishi Sunak. It's like 2 sides of the same coin of a wet blanket, really.
So how will you end up spending the general election campaign? Because you're a Labour member and you do canvassing and stuff, don't you?
Yeah, I
So
believe
will you be
there is.
knocking on doors for people then?
Yes. Arguably, I'll probably do it in my own local constituency because there's one guy. I'm not sure if I think we're gonna sort out constituency next week on Friday. See who's going to be the actual candidate. I'm not sure if there's going to be anyone shoved in last minute now. Probably Stevenage because in Hertfordshire, Stevenage is always the most contended one for like a general election.
John, I've
And
got a question. I've got a question for you. It's just occurred to me. Who's going to be the in this
be the
election?
what?
Who's going to be the candidate for Islington North in this election? Because
That's
Jeremy,
actually an interesting one because we don't know yet because Labour haven't picked the candidate, but they are putting forward names. And one of the names that has come up is Paul Mason, columnist, journalist, and ex Corbyn supporter and very enthusiastic supporter of Starmer's Labour.
you're
Who
forgetting the most essential label. I can't forget you've not. I can't believe you've not used it yet. What do we
uh
think of when we think of Paul Mason?
a man a man who has very interesting ideas about the future of humanity, to put it in a very diplomatic way.
That is a very diplomatic way to put it. Yes.
I mean,
Um,
but the thing is that it's interesting because he used to be one of the biggest supporters of Jeremy Corbyn and used to be one of the darlings of the Labour left, and now he's widely hated by all of them. And it's really interesting to see how that dynamic has changed.
Right,
Seems like it was just like a kiss up to whoever was going to be like the leader of the whoever was going to be the leader of the party. But anyway, for my thoughts on that, if Corbyn runs as an independent, I think he'll probably win, especially if it's against Paul Mason. I might be wrong, but on that. But other than that, Swiss, yeah. I'll admit, I was a bit surprised. Back to like me being surprised about the election. For when I found out about it, I saw early on Twitter when I was taking a bit of a peek on work that there may be cause for an election. But it's only until when I was just about finished with work. I mean, the last hour was kind of quiet. I just checked my social media, and it's like, oh, a general election's been called. And it's like, oh my god, they actually did it. Which I was like, oh my goodness, my brother's going to have a general election on his birthday.
On that note,
sorry, just let me intervene ever so quickly. Your brother's birthday is the 4th of July.
Yes.
My sister's birthday is the 4th of July also.
Looks like we got siblings on the same birthday, and they're going to have a GE.
4th of July is also United States of America Independence Day as well, when they gained their independence from the British Empire. So that's an interesting coincidence.
So tragically, it's also the same day my grandpa passed away years ago.
On that note, it would probably be best now to bring in the extra guests in the waiting room.
Yes, I was gonna move on to that one, right? So we'll keep the ball rolling here. Things can only get better.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you, Cameron?
I'm doing wonderfully well.
Have you been blasting D-Ream on Spotify since you heard the news?
I haven't, no. Maybe I should. But no, you know who has? Steve Bray, yeah. Steve Bray blasted it down. He's a speaker.
Wait, is that Stop Brexit Man, Steve Bray?
Yes.
Yeah, Stop Brexit Man, who's been at it for a good solid 8 years at this stage.
So he's been outside Downing Street blasting "Things Can Only Get Better" on a speaker.
Yeah, that's what he did during. It was played during the whole of Rishi Sunak's speech. It was the thing that you could hear throughout it.
Yes. Right. Dear viewers, all of you at large here, there's a project that we need to get off the ground over the next 6 weeks, okay? We all need to continuously stream Things Can Only Get Better so it re-enters the UK charts. That is the project, okay? I want it to be number one for the week of the general election. Forget your Ed Sheerans and your give me some other contemporary people. Taylor Swift. And
Taylor Swift.
Kardashians?
Yeah. Forget, do they do music? Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, forget all of them. We're going to do that. So anyway, Cameron, I've asked everyone else so far. Where were you when you heard the news? What was your reaction?
I mean, I've been seeing rumours all day about election. But when Rishi Sunak called election, I was cooking my dinner, listening to the radio in the background. So that's how I found out.
So for most of you guys, then, did you actually, because there'd been rumours churning for the day, you all got a little bit of a preamble to the announcement almost? For me, it was a total surprise because I literally heard about it from co-workers at work as I was finishing.
Yeah, I always try to be updated on the Twitter chat group just so that I don't have to scroll down too much during the day to see what's going on.
Hot damn. Okay. Right. I'm going to bring in our next guest as well, just to keep things moving, because poor old Dan and Jerry have been waiting for a quarter of an hour now. So we'll bring in Dan next. Dan is our former Tory contributor with one ear to what's going on in the Conservative Party. Hello there, sir.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Not great, considering I'm not going to have a job on the 5th of July.
Oh, shit, yeah. I'm sorry. Oh. Oh,
You're very optimistic then about your party's chances.
F to pay respects for poor Dan, guys, because that's something I hadn't thought about. You work for a Tory MP, don't you? So,
Yeah.
oh shit.
I
What are
was-
you going to do? Are you going to have to start applying for jobs in the next 6 weeks so you've got something to move into?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to gun some jobs over the next few days. I've been trying to get out for like 6 months, but I've been like, nah, the election's in November. This is quite a good job, you know. But yeah, I didn't. No one saw it coming in now, so
Is the seat that the MP you work for, are they in a marginal or is it somewhat of a safe seat?
it's sort of a bellwether, and he's not running in this one again, and he's trying to chicken run to a different seat down south.
Meatball in the
Right.
chat says, get your CV to Renham Christie ASAP, Dan. I don't know what seat he represents. Maybe he might be for the chocolate
His is
block
quite
as well.
safe.
Oh,
I
is this right?
yeah, no, because I was out with some other staffers last night, who work for other MPs, and one of them told me last night that they were speaking to a span in number 10, and that they were having the afternoon cabinet today, and the election was going to be called today. And I was like, nah, that's nonsense, no way. And then the rumor. So I was told that last night in the pub, and then it just kept ball was rolling, and then I thought, oh, I better tell the rest of the staff in our office this morning. I was like, yeah, it just came. I didn't think it was going to come true, and then sort of by like midday, I was like, oh, it's so true. When number 10 weren't denying it,
But up until the last day or two, certainly I had thought it would be in the autumn. Was that the assumption the rest of you were working on as well?
I was expecting it in
Yeah, that
October.
was mine as well. As
I was
think
expecting
you
it in
before.
October. I was expecting it in October.
Isaac Levido wanted November the 14th. I know the MPs wanted November the 14th. And Rishi and Oliver Dowden decided to lock themselves in number 10 yesterday and basically come up with a campaign. And allegedly, they've written a lot of the manifesto yesterday. And
because the past week or so, I think when Rishi gave that speech where he sort of said, we live in dangerous times, but also times of great opportunity, don't trust Keir Starmer, that very much felt like a preamble to an election campaign speech. But I'd kind of thought, but this is like the long campaign that's going to go on for the next 3 or 4 months, you know? And then Starmer launched his not a pledge card with the curious number of 6 pledges on it. Which again felt like an election preamble, and it all seems to have lined up pretty nicely now. I want to bring in our final guest, and then we're going to treat ourselves to watching the announcements. It's from the good old island of Ireland. It's Jerry.
Hey.
Or Harry Hill with a shotgun. Perhaps.
Jerry,
yeah.
who did you get drunk to get Sunak to call an election?
I don't really know. All I really know is that that man is fucked. He is cooked. Like, this has actually been you know what? I can't even really talk about it that much because, like, Swiss, whenever you see the speech, you'll understand whenever I say that it is legitimately the funniest fucking PM speech I've ever seen happen. That man does not get a single fucking word in. It is so funny.
You're big, right? You're big. I'm gonna search for this.
Can only get better.
See, I don't even know the song, so I can't even sing it. Sort of like that one David Baddiel football song.
Right. Rishi Sunak calls general election. I'm getting the video lined up now, guys, and then we can all watch it together.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like,
I'll probably
I-
mute myself for the next 10 to 15 minutes because I will be heading for the train soon. So,
okay.
and then afterwards, I will join you again.
That's no problem, and that's appreciated if there's likely to be a lot of background noise as you're moving around, because the last thing we need is Rishi Sunak and then there's a car goes by past you. Thank you.
The one thing that I was surprised about from what I've heard and from what I've seen online as well is the fact that basically no one, apart from probably Rishi Sunak and Oliver Dowden, knew that this was coming. The Tory MPs didn't know about it. None of the activists knew about it. Everyone pretty much, apart from those two people, pretty much found out today that we were having a general election. So there's been no preparation at all by anybody on the Tory side for it happening, because everyone thought that it was penciled in for the autumn. So they had their plans according to that assumption. And so now all of them are essentially in full panic mode and anger mode at the fact that they've just been thrown a general election on their plate with no ability or time to prepare for it, which I thought was quite amusing, to be honest.
Just to build on that, there's been a lot of Tory MPs in the past 3-4 months who haven't had local elections in their area that have less than 10 houses voting intentions from the past 4 months because they thought they could do it all this summer and the election would be in November. So there was a lot of Tory constituencies that would be naturally considered safe, but because the polling is so bad, they have done no groundwork for ages because they were just planning to do a lot of it this summer, and now this has been sprung upon them that they're way behind.
I will make one point in defense of Rishi Sunak's unexpected announcement here, which is that he did time and time again say that he expected a general election would be held in the second half of the year.
Is that right?
And he's just about made it.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. He literally fucking said at noon at PMQs that.
Yeah, to be fair, he did keep that promise, but the problem is that for the average person, when people think second half of the year, they typically think the late autumn, early winter. When people think of second half of the year, they don't think, oh, July, it's technically true. It is the second half of the year, but it's not a month that people think of when they think second half of the year.
You think
it's
September onwards.
Yeah.
Why do you think we're trying to get maths to all these kids, eh? That's
Rishi Sunak, of all fucking people, considering who he is, he shouldn't be using 5'9" measurements like that. Second half of the year, and this is 7 fucking months.
From what I heard, and it is just rumours, and it was mentioned here by Lee Ball in the comments section, that there were a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of MPs that were putting in their letters of no confidence to the 1922 committee. So essentially, the rumour is that they got close to the number needed to trigger a no confidence vote, and Sunak basically went, well, if I'm going down, I'm taking all of the Tory party with me, and I'm not going to have a no confidence vote. And if I'm going to lose my job, it's going to be through a general election, not a no confidence vote, because I'm not going down the same way that Truss and Johnson did. And so he called this on them. It is just rumours, and I don't know if it's true, but that's what has been stated by some people.
Well, in some ways, it probably makes sense if they were expecting an election in November, where they try and oust Sunak now, get a temporary PM for the next 100 or so days until November, then call the GE. It would probably make sense in that regard. Sorry, I'm just getting off there.
No, that's right. I had heard, in the past month or two, the idea that, in order to head off the possibility of a leadership challenge, Sunak could call an election for July. But at the time, it was one of the things that I thought, well, yeah, he could. But after nothing seemed to come of the immediate results of the local elections in terms of leadership challenge, I thought, oh, well, clearly that hasn't ended up happening. But that is very interesting. Like you say, it's apparently rumour. I've literally only just got back in from work and started this stream, so I've not been able to take a look at that. But certainly I will be trying to find out everything I can over the next day or so about why exactly this election has been called when it has. Because if it is the case that he's jumping rather than being pushed, then that's just fascinating. But I'm not going to pin myself to that being the reason just yet.
I think the reason for it, if it was indeed because of the no confidence vote issue, I suspect that what probably happened with that, if I was to speculate here, is that the Tories over the past 2 or so weeks have essentially mulled over the local results and digested them. And because they were so bad, so much worse than they predicted, especially with the regards to the Westminster mayoralty, which they really thought they would win, but ended up losing. I suspect a lot of Tory MPs looked over those local results, digested them, and essentially had the assumption of, if we stick with Sunak, we are completely screwed, so we got to get rid of him. And Sunak basically went, "You're not getting rid of me. I'm having a general. We're having a general election in July, and deal with it."
I want that to be the case. I really do, because it just finishes the whole narrative of this period of Tories in office brilliantly. Shall we watch the speech, guys? Shall we watch the announcement speech? Because I've got the video.
Oh, hell
set
yeah,
up here.
brother.
Yeah, let's do it. It'll be really good entertainment.
Oh,
This is going to be so fucked.
You guys have been bigging this up to me so much, so I cannot wait.
It's the worst
Dude, I
speech I've ever
I
seen.
watched it live and I thought I got drugged or something. Like, it was so fucking bad.
By the way, before we start the speech, I accidentally said Westminster mayoralty. I meant West Midlands mayoralty. I got it mixed up there, just for reference.
No problem. No problem. Thank you for the clarification. Right then, I'll just start playing. Let me know if you can hear it.
In the last 5 years,
Yep.
Yep,
All right,
we
then.
can hear it.
I hear it too well,
Right,
actually.
let's do it. All right then, guys.
our country has fought through the most challenging times since the Second World War. As I stand here as your Prime Minister, I can't help but reflect that my first proper introduction.
Sorry, I won't keep pausing this properly, but just before we get into it, I want your thoughts on the podium. We always rate the podium. I'd say that this is a rather no frills, basic,
Mid.
budget-looking podium. Really,
It looks
it's
like
made
the
of
wood
plywood.
has. It kind of looks like wood made from a very, very old, outdated tree, which accurately sums up the Conservative Party these days, if I'm honest.
It's missing a layer of gloss, isn't it?
It
Yeah.
is.
I rate this,
It's
I
not
rate
got the
this podium
varnish.
3 2x4s out of 5.
All right, there we go.
Introduction to
Carry on.
you was just over 4 years ago. I stood behind one of the podiums upstairs in the building behind me. I told you that we faced a generation-defining moment and that we as a society would not be judged by some government action, but by the small acts of kindness that we showed one another. You met that challenge and then some, and I have never been prouder to be British. And when I introduced the furlough scheme, I did so not because I saw a country simply in need of desperate help, albeit we were, but because I saw a country whose future hung in the balance. I could be bold and trust in the tens of millions of you at home that you would rise to the moment, or I could accept the inevitable millions of job losses and pick up the pieces. In truth, it was no choice at all. I have never and will never leave the people of this country to face the darkest of days alone. And you know that because you've seen it. As I did then, I will forever do everything in my power to provide you with the strongest possible protection I can. That is my promise to you.
Sounds like he's trying to sell himself as a condom or something. I will give you the strongest protection.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
God.
so it's 1 minute into the speech and already there's mic feedback problems and police sirens blaring in the background while he's talking about what a great country
And
he's
this is
made
just
of.
the beginning. Okay.
Yeah,
But he's definitely
this-
sort of pitching it so far as, dangerous times ahead, but don't worry, Britain. I've never abandoned you, and I will guide you through this stormy night, blah, blah, blah. That's what
And also throughout the speech, look at his shoulder pads just to see how much fucking rain actually lands on him, because by the end it looks like his suit's made out of rubber.
Oh yes, the rain accumulation is one of the best parts of this speech. It is very, very funny.
Oh, I love this. We've got another 6 minutes to go. Brilliant. Okay, let's get back at it.
Because for so many of us, it's easy to forget the scale of what we've been through. We were hit by a pandemic, upended normal life. Who would have thought that the government would ever tell us how many times a day we could leave our homes? Then, just as we were recovering from COVID, war returned to Europe, with Putin's invasion of Ukraine sending your energy bills spiraling. I came to office, above all, to restore economic stability. Economic stability is the bedrock of any future success, whether that is rising wages and good jobs, investment in our public services, or the defense of the country.
That suit is getting a bit wet.
And because of our collective sacrifice and your hard work, we have reached 2 major milestones in delivering that stability, showing that when we work together,
Oh, here it is.
anything is possible. Our economy is now growing faster than anyone predicted, outpacing Germany, France, and the United States.
Things can only
And this
get
morning it was
better.
confirmed that inflation
Like,
is
I'm
back to
sorry,
normal.
but this just reminds me of whenever
This means
Ruth
that the
Bader
pressure on
Ginsburg
prices will
died,
ease
and Trump
and
was like
mortgage
listening
rates
to
will
fucking
come
Elton
down.
John.
This is proof that the plan and priorities I set out are working. I recognise that it has not always been easy.
He's trying to fight his way through smiling at it. It's just, I can
Oh,
see
the-
it, the little twitches in his mouth. He
Like,
probably
it
wants to cry.
continues. It goes for like
Oh.
the next 2 or 3 minutes, and like by the end of
Oh.
it, he's not having fun. He's just like, I want to kill myself.
So, oh no. Okay, so he's getting drenched in the rain. Things can only get better. It's being played on a speaker behind him.
Oh, I didn't notice that his arms also got wet as well as his shoulders. So basically, his whole suit got soaked.
He's looking shiny at this point.
Yeah, he has like a fucking gloss finish by the end of it. It looks like the fucking closing shot of a porno.
Thank you for that imagery there. Okay. Well, things can only get better, as they say.
Some of you will only just be starting to feel the benefits, and for some, it might still be hard when you look at your bank balance. But this hard-earned economic stability was only ever meant to be the beginning. The question now is how and who do you trust to turn that foundation into a secure future for you, your family, and our country. Now is the moment for Britain to choose its future, to decide whether we want to build on the progress we have made or risk going back to square one with no plan and no certainty. Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July. This election will take place at a time when the world is more dangerous than it has been since the end of the Cold War. Putin's Russia is waging a brutal war in Ukraine and will not stop there if he succeeds. That war has also made it all too clear the risk to our energy security. In the Middle East, the forces of Islamist extremism threaten regional.
Can I just say, I love the juxtaposition as well, that he's painting the narrative of things are the worst they've been in 20 or 30 years, and it's the most dangerous time ever.
Can only get
Things
better.
can only get better.
He's talking about fighting ISIS to like fucking 90s music. Like, how can you not laugh at that?
We're still on the banter timeline. We never got off. We never got off.
We need a speech of the year category for the Milkies. I'm just saying, just for this shit.
Yeah, hands down, hands down. This is one of the political moments.
Oh,
of
I
the year.
mean, can you imagine if when he loses in July, what music will be playing in the background by Steve Bray? Because that's who's playing this, by the way. It's Steve Bray, who got a big amp speaker and just blasted out "Things Can Only Get Better."
Oh yeah,
he's been ASBO'd now. The police took his stuff off him after this.
Wow, this is the
Oh,
most
that's
antisocial
bad.
speaker since John Burko.
I was watching like coverage of Number 10 before the speech. He was literally screaming Tories out for like 20 minutes straight and didn't get tired once.
Well, you know what? He's nothing if not persistent. I'll give him that.
I recognized him because I saw his fucking blue top hat reflecting off of like the glossy finish of the door.
Right, we'll press on. Let's see what Sunak's pitch is, because he's telling us that times are dangerous and that this is the most dangerous moment we've been in since the end of the Cold War. Arguably, he is correct. But this is the bit where he then says, and therefore it's got to be me, Rishi Sunak, who guides us through this dark night.
And ultimately global stability. These tensions are exploited by extremists who seek to undermine our values and divide our society here at home. China is looking to dominate the 21st century by stealing a lead in technology. And migration is being weaponized by hostile states to threaten the integrity of our borders.
But things can only get better.
These uncertain times call for a clear plan and bold action to chart a course to a secure future. You must choose in this election who has that plan, who is prepared to take the bold action necessary to secure a better future for our country and our children. Now, I cannot and will not claim that we have got everything right. No government should. But I am proud of what we have achieved together, the bold actions we have taken, and I'm confident about what we can do in the future. We've tackled inflation, controlled debt, cut workers' taxes, and increased the state pension by £900. We've reduced taxes on investment and seized the opportunities of Brexit to make this the best country in the world to grow a business, put record amounts of funding into our NHS and ensured it is now training the doctors and nurses it needs in the decades to come. We've reformed education, and our children are now the best readers in the Western world. We prioritised energy security and your family finances over environmental dogma in our approach to net zero. We fully funded an increase in defence spending to 2.5% of GDP.
Can I just tell you a really quick anecdote in response to all of this, the achievements of the Tory government being listed off? At work, when I'd heard about the general election, there's this woman I work with, and just on the way out, I said to her, "Oh, have you heard a general election's been called?" And she went, "Oh, what's that?" And I said, "Oh, where you vote for who the government is." And she went, "Oh, right, okay. I don't really follow politics or any of that. I don't really know that, so I wouldn't even know who to vote for." And I just sort of said to her, "Well, it's the Conservatives in at the moment, and all you need to do is just ask yourself, over the past 14 years since they've been in, would you say things have got better or worse?" And she went, "Oh, they've got a lot worse." And I said, "All right, then vote for the other people then in that case." So I think I might have just won a vote for Labour by just saying, "Do you think things are shit?" Okay, yeah, they are. Right, go vote then.
But the issue with that is that things can only get better.
I mean, they can only get better. Well, no. Things can also get worse before they get better. But in the end, they'll get better. But that's a little bit too long to put on an election poster.
Remember when everyone was making Dominic Cummings to be out to be Satan because he was chief advisor to the PM? That's going to be replaced with Peter Mandelson now.
We swapped Cummings for Mandelson.
The dark
Things can only get Epstein.
I heard Dominic Cummings was trying to start a new party.
Just quickly, and I do mean quickly because we need to carry on with the speech, but when you're just saying about starting a party there, has this shot the fox of Nigel Farage coming back to lead reform? Because if he hypothetically was going to, is it now a little bit too soon, too quick to get in on that? Is he going to have to do it quite quickly if he would?
He could do it if he wanted to, but he's unlikely. But the other thing it does do regarding reform is it makes it incredibly difficult for them to do any kind of a pact with Tories, which they were never going to do anyway. But if they wanted to, for the sake of argument, it makes it much, much more difficult for them to do that now.
Right, I'll crack on with this.
We made a decision to invest more in local.
Oh, but I will just add quickly. Pod just said apparently there's a reform press conference tomorrow morning, so we'll see. Thank you for that one, Pod.
Transport that you actually use rather than
yes.
If there's too many background noise with like other train passengers, let's see, just let me know and I'll mute myself.
Okay, no props.
Endlessly plough more money into HS2. We set out a comprehensive plan to reform our welfare system, to make it fair for those who pay for it as well as those who need it. Immigration is finally coming down, and we are stopping the boats with our Rwanda partnership.
Hang on a moment. Immigration is finally coming down. I don't think that's factually correct, is it?
I'm not sure. I think he finally got Rwanda passed or something, but that's
Rwanda's
about
been passed, yes.
I'm sorry, how much of this speech has been fucking factually correct to you?
Well. In fairness, right, a lot of his stuff so far has been cherry picks things that he's achieved, and arguably some of it you can. But on the one of immigration is finally coming down, I don't know, perhaps. But I'd thought that actually, sort of counterintuitively post Brexit, it's actually gone up quite a bit in the past few years, not even including the votes. But
there's meant to be some stats coming out in September, October, showing that over the past year, migration's more than halved from the year before.
All right. Fair play, Rishi.
However,
fair play.
However, the election is in July and not in November, so he's not going to get the benefit of these stats coming out because he's a fucking plonker. Sorry.
There is
So-
one
Will
person
there
who
be
will
any-
get them.
In
Will there
other
be any
words,
planes to-
Keir.
Will
So in
there be
other
any
words, Keir
planes to
Starmer.
Rwanda between now and the election? Like, will he
So in
actually
other-
send anyone to Rwanda before the vote
The
happens?
planes are meant to be going in. I know we've said July, but I've seen planes are set for June, so there might be planes during the campaign.
So yeah, there is one person who will benefit from the immigration coming down, and it's Keir Starmer. So there's that at least.
So Starmer's going to get credit for reducing immigration, even though he would have done nothing at all.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, considering the coverage of the planes so far, the only way them planes are moving is a fucking Al Qaeda hijacks them at this rate.
In many ways, Starmer just seems to just get his leads and polling at the right time.
Starmer has been very fortunate in his string of opponents over the past few years. So
He
Rishi
was-
needs to
he
have a
was-
rally at the end of the runway when that first plane takes off next month.
Yeah, Starmer has been basically from the very start the win by default candidate, and that is pretty much what's going to happen. He's going to win by default because the Tories are so unpopular.
Yeah, I mean, it's ever since Partygate, he was guaranteed to win the next general election. Before then, some wondered, is he still going to be Labour leader because of, the 2021 locals were kind of bad and he just barely won the by-election in Bantley and Spen, where, if he lost that, there might have been attempts to oust him.
I think Partygate put the Tories in serious jeopardy, but I think it was Liz Truss that sealed the deal on Labour winning the next election. And then, as we've seen, everything Sunak's done since has been unable to move the dial.
I actually think that the Ukraine situation is probably what sealed the fate for the Tories, because that invasion has caused so much economic damage to the UK for the past 2 years with the sky-high energy prices and inflation that it basically doomed whatever chance the Tories had of coming back, and Liz Truss just finished the job. But they were kind of doomed from April of 2022 when we got those energy prices, and it was double what everyone was paying up until that point.
I don't think the country's clocked on that the government paid for half of a lot of people's energy prices for a good while. I don't think the public have clocked on to that like they did with furlough, because Liz Truss is the one that announced it and paid for it. And
there was so much going on at the time with Truss that it got lost amidst everything else.
Yeah, to be fair, at the time, there were serious worries that at the absolute worst case scenario, we could see energy bills. I was reading about it at the time back in August, and there was real concerns of both rolling blackouts and energy bills of upwards of $6,000 a year. I remember seeing some that were speculating it was going to reach that high if nothing was done, which is why the price cap was introduced. And to be fair, it probably would have gotten that high if it wasn't for the price cap. But because, as you said, Truss's leadership was such a disaster, lasting only 44 days, people just never caught on to that fact in the end, so the Tories got no credit for it whatsoever.
And not short enough it was, but
the person
but yeah.
to really blame for all this is Nick Clegg, because in 2010 and 2011, he stopped David Cameron building nuclear power stations, and it has made the whole situation so much worse. And no wonder Facebook is going down the toilet at the moment. I'll just say that.
I like that we've traced this all back to Nick Clegg. Maybe Nick Clegg was the point.
What's the point of Nick Clegg?
Right,
seems
we'll
the
do-
point of him.
But yeah,
Go on.
but I'll definitely say with Liz Truss, she guaranteed Labour to win a huge majority. Before then, they would probably gotten some small majority, even minority. But with Liz Truss, they're bound to get a large majority to a landslide.
I mean, to think that the Tories at present are at Truss era polling levels right now is just remarkable. Like a year ago, 2 years ago, I really genuinely thought they would close the gap with Labour to within 10 or so points with Sunak taking over.
Oh yeah,
And
speaking
they're
of which,
just as far behind as they were at the worst times of Truss right now.
Speaking of which, Swiss, Salvation has done a new poll today.
Oh, right. I will take a. We'll crack on with the video, and then I will look at some polling as we go into sort of discussing ramping up for general election. So don't tell me what it says yet. I'll have a look soon. Right, okay, we'll do the last couple of minutes of this video.
And we will ensure that the next generation grows up smoke-free. I hope that my work since
You're
I
banning
became Prime
disposable
Minister
vapes, you son of a
shows
bitch.
we have a plan and are prepared to take bold action necessary for our country to flourish. Now, I've stuck with that plan and always been honest with you about what is needed, even when that's been difficult. Because I'm guided by doing what is right for our country, not what is easy. I can't say the same thing for the Labour Party, because I don't know what they offer. And in truth, I don't think you know either. And that's because they have no plan. There is no bold action. And as a result, the future can only be uncertain with them. On the 5th of July...
No, as a result, things can only get better. That's the truth there, Rishi. I do think that's an interesting point of his pitch here to kind of go, here's me, Rishi Sunak, Tories, here's all the things that we've done, here's how you can rely on me to take us through tough times. Labour obviously don't have a plan. And actually, in fairness, I think that there probably is a decent lack of cut-through that Labour, even at this point, have had with the public at large in terms of what their plans are. Obviously, we've had more announcements for policies since the conference last year. Us lot who follow all this stuff, we can actually list off a few things that Labour would do in government. But as far as the public at large go, I think it's probably fair enough to say that it's a decent avenue of attack for Sunak to try and say at this point, what have Labour actually said that they do? Because I imagine that most people out there wouldn't be able to point to anything that distinctive off the top of their head, probably.
I have no idea what they're going to do, Swiss.
You're a Labour member, John.
That may be the case, but the problem that Rishi and the Tories have is that while it may be the case, uncertain about what the Labour's going to do, people know what the Tories are going to do, and it's going to be, in the eyes of the public, very, very bad. And no one wants it to be very, very bad. So people would rather take the mystery box than they would the box that gives them despair.
The box.
If it's anything, their strategy against Starmer might have worked if they were more like new in terms of government or they had less years in power. But the fact that this is going to be like their 4th term, pretty much, everyone knows what they've pretty much done over the last 14 years. And they've pretty much run out of all the excuses of coalitions with the Lib Dems, Brexit, Corbyn, etc., whatever else they could throw at them, at the public.
And I think as well, just given the 6 weeks or so that we've got to run of the general election campaign, obviously the public will become more aware of what's actually on offer by the two parties by the end of it than they are at this point in time. So the idea of going Labour don't have a plan, that won't stand up as well by the end of the campaign as it does now. Maybe it's the position at the moment that most of the public doesn't know what Labour's offering. By the end, they'll probably have a better idea. It's not necessarily to say that large swathes of the public will think it's an amazing plan and they're really excited by everything and, blah, blah, blah. But at the very least, there'll be more awareness of it than there is presently.
Keir Starmer could turn out to be a fox hunter, a rabbit killer, and eat puppies every evening, and he will still win a majority. We are that bad. Like, there's nothing wrong that he'll do on this campaign that will swing it. I've had people saying to me today that Theresa May had a 25-point lead over Jeremy Corbyn when the election was called, and the gap between May and Corbyn was similar between Starmer and Rishi now, and so anything's possible. But Rishi Sunak does not ignite people like Jeremy Corbyn did, and Keir Starmer is not going to introduce a dementia tax between now and the 4th of July.
Yeah, they're not. It's either not May or Corbyn, Sunak, and Starmer.
Yeah, Starmer is Mr. Careful. That is what he's modelled his whole political ethos on over the past few years. He's been incredibly careful not to say anything too controversial, row back on anything that could be used as an attack line by the Tories. He's smoothed off the edges of all of his exciting policies and plans and made them a bit more vague and beige. He's playing it the safest he possibly can going into this election. And for that
And he's
reason,
also
I agree with you that I
Yeah.
really struggle to think what could come along that would dislodge Labour from winning at
Yeah.
this point.
I also
Yeah, the
think
thing-
that he's also gone on and on and on about how he's not Corbyn as well.
Yeah, the other problem with that as well, with the Corbyn May comparison, is that Corbyn, at his core, whether you liked him or not, was always an extremely good campaigner because campaigning is something he's done for decades of his life. And he also knew what policies to put forward and focused in particular on policies that were extremely popular with the public. The other thing as well is that Corbyn had the youth, which up until that point was very disenfranchised with politics. So he managed to rally them to his side and get them on his side. And he also had a huge campaign network behind him. Sunak has absolutely none of these advantages. And so the comparison between Corbyn and Sunak is just an extremely poor one at the end of the day. And I honestly think it's just cope for Tory members, if I'm honest, who just want to
also
accept
think-
our reality.
He also managed to turn the general election into a sort of anti-austerity campaign as well.
Yes.
I want to. We'll finish off the video here, but I just want to read out a super chat comment here from Pterodax, who says Sunak's government was a zombie since Braverman was out and Cameron was in. They've been dead as dodos since. Good evening, all. I am voting Starmer with a nice £5 donation attached there. So thank you very much, sir. Nice to have you with us. And I too. I'm not saying this especially full-throatedly or proudly or excitedly, but I too will be voting Starmer. I can't imagine me voting otherwise in this election. To be honest, I think I'm going to be voting.
Well, it
Not even
depends.
with others.
If you're in like a Lib Dem margin or maybe even a rare green one, you might vote for them.
Oh yeah, it would be yeah. If it were a different constituency, if it weren't that Labour were the main challengers to the Tories where I live, then perhaps I would be voting differently. But it just lines up and makes too much sense that I'm going to vote Labour to get the Tories out this year. You know.
Yeah, the other thing as well is about that. I'll mention the Lib Dems before because there's something interesting I want to say about them, particularly with reference to Southwest England. But back to Pterodax's point, he does raise a valid point there about Cameron and Braverman. It's like if you ever wanted an example of a government that is thoroughly exhausted of everything possible, it's bringing back the ex-prime minister from 8 years ago into your cabinet, and you had to make him a lord in order to do it, not an MP. If you ever wanted an example of a government that is thoroughly out of ideas, unlike Corbyn, who had a lot of ideas, whether you agreed with him or not, that is your perfect example of it. I mean, the fact that Cameron is back instantly disproves the Corbyn comparison as one example.
They brought it full circle. You know, the Tories and government started with Cameron. He went away for a few seasons, but then for the finale, they brought him back, as you do. You know, you get the whole game together.
So like Brown brought Mandelson back.
Exactly.
So if Starmer eventually brings back either Blair or Brown in the Lords for his own one cabinet position, we know he's run out of ideas, right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. If that ended up being the case, I mean, I couldn't see Blair taking a proactive role in the Starmer government because it would just. Yeah, I think Blair's off doing his own thing, offering advice here and there. But I think
The funny thing is,
Too busy running the world, Blair.
yeah, the funny thing is, you say that, but there is a right-wing conspiracy theory that states that Starmer will be Prime Minister for 2 years, resign, and then Tony Blair will come back and be Prime Minister again via the similar method to how Cameron became Foreign Secretary, where he'll become a member of the Lords and then he'll run unopposed as Labour leader, then become Prime Minister again. This is what the right-wing conspiracy theory states.
And if you add up
Wait,
the first
Blair.
letter of each line in the Labour manifesto, it actually spells out Tony Blair will return to enslave us to the World Economic Forum, and we will live in 15-minute cities and eat the bugs.
But it's true.
I read it online. It's gonna happen. I've got articles.
That's so ridiculous. Blair doesn't need to come. Blair doesn't need to come back. He's ready in Starmer.
Blair's in his most powerful final form now. He is the Dark Lord of this world. He is he who must not be named, and he runs many African governments and tells them what to do. He has many European leaders around his little pinky. He has Blair around it. He has Starmer around his little pinky. Blair gets all his money from Bill Gates' foundation. The man has never been more powerful or more influential than he is now. And
So
I don't think
is that why we've got?
Is
Is that why we've got half the African countries going into coups and revolutions right now?
Yeah, probably because Blair's egging them on. Honestly, the stuff that man gets up to is insane.
Right. Enough.
We
Blair,
got one
just
more
a
minute
moment.
left of the speech, so let's
finish
wrap
the
it up.
speech here.
July, either Keir Starmer or I will be Prime Minister. He has shown time and time again that he will take the easy way out and do anything to get power. If he was happy to abandon all the promises he made to become Labour leader once he got the job, how can you know that he won't do exactly the same thing if he were to become Prime Minister? If you don't have...
It's actually a fair point, to be fair. That's one of the
in terms of rhetoric, it's a good point. But instantly I'm just going, well, he abandoned them in order to win power. He got rid of all the socialist campaign group policies so he could win over Tory voters. It's pretty plain as day. That's what the deal was with it. But how do you know that he won't get in and then suddenly... Well, I mean, actually, though, here's a point, though. Okay, so if Starmer started off being with Jeremy Corbyn light policies, but then he ditched them in order to win power at any cost, and then he gets into power, how do you know that he's going to do different things to what he said this time around? Is the suggestion that he's then going to revert and do a 180 back to Corbyn-esque policies, or would it be that he becomes more right-wing all of a sudden? Like, what's the danger in this mystery man Starmer of he's going to get into power? What nefarious things is he going to do?
Oh, he's pretending to be a Blairite, and he's going to come in and be a Corbynite. That's what we're getting at.
That was a very clever game. Well, I mean, how could a man who voted twice to make Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister ever be trusted to become Prime Minister himself?
Well, he's a man that'll do anything to get in power.
He's desperate to get power, says the man who's afraid to lose power to start.
It's not that out there, because a lot of the left painted Boris as a massive fascist, and we're only saying he's pretending to be liberal when he campaigned and liking the NHS to get elected. As an election strategy, is not. I could think of worse things.
Yeah, I do think, like I said earlier, this would probably be more effective if perhaps the Tory government was only in term for if they're in government for 1 term or 2, not at 4 terms.
So basically, you're saying if people didn't all hate them and they were sick to their back teeth of them, and they've been in for a decade and a half, and they want them out at any cost.
Yeah,
they'd be faring a bit better.
Yeah, I think this would be this attack line would probably be a lot more effective against them.
Had they not brought in the man that kicked off the 14 years and been Prime Minister for the first half of it, making people remember how long that they've been in office for, and made the bloke Foreign Secretary, then maybe it might have been a little bit easier to say I'm a lot different to the start of the 14 years of this party leading the government. But hang on.
Didn't you see Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party conference speech where he said that he was tearing up 30 years of orthodoxy where things weren't working? And
he hired Cameron 2 weeks later.
He is the change. He's smoked 3 generations, scrapped HS2. He's vision. Vision, future, maths.
I'm so different and I'm dynamic and new, which is why one of the great offices of state is occupied by the ex-prime minister of the party that has ruled for 14 years. But
Hey,
I'm dynamic and
look,
different,
for-
people.
Hey,
for
look,
the most part-
If he was going to put an ex-Tory prime minister since 2010 in one of the great offices of state, Cameron's in the top half of the ones he could have picked.
I mean, the only ones he could have picked. I mean, his choices were either May, Boris, Truss, on Major.
Yeah,
He
I-
probably would have done
he's-
better if he had brought John Major back, if I'm honest.
I'm
he-
still here.
He has changed. Like, he's way more hawkish on foreign policy. He's far more committed to spending money on public services than Liz Truss or Boris would have been. I mean, you look at the borrowing figures that come out today, and part of the reason a lot of us think he's called this election is inflation is internally predicted in the Treasury to go up in September and October, and so that won't be good. And the borrowing figures are not looking good that came out today, and there's no money for tax cuts, which Hunt was going to do. Like he is different to Boris and Liz, I'd guess, but he's just like Theresa May, but a bit more hawkish.
Let's end
yes,
the speech. Yeah.
we will. I just quickly also want to say hello to Callum, who's just joined us as well.
Let's fucking go. Don't worry, I am coming in. I am almost sober. I have ejaculated several times, so I have post-nut clarity. I am ready to discuss.
well, that's a good start. Okay, wonderful. We'll do the last minute of this, and then we'll get into the rest.
I think we can tell. That
Just stick.
We can tell that you have, because it's all over fucking Rishi's jacket.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, the progressive, the soaking wet jacket. I mean, well, let's end the speech, and I'll give my comment on the soaking wet jacket in a minute.
I'd love to be a really right-wing Tory right now, just to make some joke about him being wet. Look at that wet Rishi Sunak. All right, here we go.
To anything you say, if you don't have the courage to tell people what you want to do, and if you don't have a plan, how can you possibly be trusted to lead our country, especially at this most uncertain of times? Over the next few weeks, I will fight for every vote. I will earn your trust, and I will prove to you that only a Conservative government led by me will not put our hard-earned economic stability at risk, can restore pride and confidence in our country, and with a clear plan and bold vision, deliver a secure future for you, your family, and our United Kingdom.
Oh,
Unlike
so-
my jacket,
okay,
which is not
right.
very secure.
So he's not. To be fair, he's not the only one that's soaking wet this evening. But
What I find amazing about that is, what are the right-wing newspapers or just the newspapers going to do when they have their picture, front page pictures, where he's just soaked completely?
Well, could I point something out, by the way? We just listened to the Telegraph, right? I listened to it live on the BBC earlier today. They managed to mute things are only going to things are going to only get better. Things can only get better.
Did you say almost sober?
No, I genuinely just stammered there. I
Okay,
am
sorry.
actually sober. I
Go on,
only
go
just started drinking. What I did notice is that Steve Bray was blasting things can only get better from the Downing Street gates, and I've noticed over the course of the last 2.5 hours that every single news report has gotten it more and more muted.
Well, I'm glad that we didn't. I'm glad that we've given the raw, unfiltered version here on the channel, and we've not gone for some horrible edited, airbrushed version of what. Right. By the way, right, I want your headline ideas. This goes to the chat as well. I want your ideas for the headline of Rishi Sunak calling an election that goes with the picture of him soaking wet outside of Downing Street. What have you got for me? This is Have I Got News for You? What's your ideas?
Swimming in sewage.
Swimming in sewage. I would say washed out.
Washed out. That's the Daily Mirror.
Soggy tissue.
Soggy Sunak.
Soggy Sunak.
Soggy
Sunak summer
calls-
washout.
Yes, Soggy Sunak's summer washout. No, Soggy Sunak's summer.
We need enough rest.
You need another S, and it needs to be something like washout or landslide or something.
Shit
Splash
fest.
down.
Something Rainy Rishi. Rainy Rishi ran.
Watch Rishi run. See Rishi run.
Britain
NA
rains
has
on
Sunak soaks the fires of the last 14 years. Oh my God, Charlie's got it. Things can only get wetter.
Yes,
Yes!
perfect. Yeah, no, that is the Daily Mirror headline.
Yeah, that is perfect.
That is beautiful. Right, Charlie, candidate
well
for Side Chatter of the Year. Just off of that, well done.
Perfect.
Question, Swiss. How many of the actual right-wing press is actually going to side with the Tories this general election?
Okay, so hear me out. The Labour Party will get the support of the Daily Mirror, the Guardian, the Independent,
Scum.
possibly also the Sun. The Tories will get the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, and the Times. The Financial Times will tentatively support Labour, so long as they are sufficiently economically liberal, and The Economist will support Labour more out of its sort of international policy principles.
GB News Reform UK.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Sky
sounds
News
about right.
Tory. BBC ostensibly impartial, but actually Labour.
Yeah.
And
Channel 4 Labour, ITV Labour, Sky News Labour.
Channel 4 will be the only out.
Channel 4 will be like Lib Dem or Green.
No, Channel 4 will actually. I would argue Channel 4 will be the only major news outlet that will not skew any particular way.
Probably because they'll be happy enough with the outcome that they can play it totally straight. And
I'm
a genuine believer in Channel 4 News as one of the better news outlets in Britain.
Who will the Daily Star endorse? That's what we all want to know.
I definitely think it's the best out of the lot.
They'll endorse the Princess Diana party. Princess Diana Justice White Resident Sewage Residence Party.
They might.
Which, now to think about it, is just George Galloway.
Princess Diana Justice White Resident Sewage Residence Party.
I'd say the Daily Star will probably endorse the Reclaim Party. That's probably who they'll endorse.
Oh, hang on! I just want to type that out just for my own preservation here. I love that. Princess Diana
White Residence.
Wait, what was it? Princess Diana Justice.
Princess Diana
White
Justice
Resident,
White Resident Sewage
Residence.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, by the way, there has been, I don't know if anyone else has mentioned this, but there has been a massive mudslide in Rishi Sunak's constituency that's already killed at least one person.
What?
Like, there's been an actual natural disaster.
No, all right, okay, sorry, I'm not laughing at natural disaster, but just with all these talks of, like, the Labour landslide, and today you have a Rishi Sunak constituency mudslide.
That has killed a guy.
Is it Rishi Sunak?
No, it's some 70-year-old man who presumably would have voted Tory.
Oh, no.
In many ways, it seems like the superstitious people would probably say this is the sign of disaster to come for Sunak.
Well, we've been having fucking omens for the last month.
Just as a point really quickly, NA says TV stations don't usually make endorsements. You are correct. We were just speaking in terms of bias and where we feel that...
No, I mean, Sky News has already been doing a rearguard action for the Tories' arsehole.
Oh yeah, I mean I've
What?
seen Sky News' announcement, and it's just ridiculous. Like, if this is what the Sky News is, what propaganda looks like if it's not trying to be ridiculous.
Sky
Yeah,
News is like
Sky News
praising
is
Starmer as a
competent
god.
GB News.
Well, hang on then. So what have Sky News done in relation to the Tories then? I'm interested to
Oh,
hear.
they've basically, you just had people on there coming out and saying things like, oh, things are difficult for Rishi, but all these great achievements like inflation going down and the IMF revising economic growth and all this nonsense. And it's like, maybe he can overcome the gap and make this race competitive.
Sounds like Sky News has gone full on Murdoch.
Which is odd because presumably Keir Starmer has spent the last 4 years trying to get Rupert Murdoch. I mean, how many times can you suck that old Australian's balls before he'll actually endorse you? Or is the problem that Keir Starmer's too old? You know, Murdoch appreciated the supple lips of Tony Blair back in the day, and that Keir Starmer is just too old and not kinky enough.
Would you guys, just as I desperately change topic, would you guys like to see an image of sad, wet Rishi Sunak?
Yes, because this will probably be what the newspapers use for
Yeah,
tomorrow.
it will be that picture of him absolutely soaked, probably with his eyes closed, kind of looking to yeah, or yeah, that is the verbatim image.
Yeah,
That's going to be the thumbnail for this video as
that's
well.
going to be, that's going to be what is printed in every newspaper apart from maybe the Daily Mail.
Yeah,
That's-
general election announcement brackets gone sexual.
Headline is "Man spits, forgets to swallow."
Mhm. I was always taught that it was rude to spit.
You're killing me.
You can do what you want when you're a billionaire.
Someone did joke that Rishi Sunak looked at the start of term dates in California and realised that they start school in August.
Oh yeah, some places in the US, in particular California, the start of term for things there is basically August. So he seemed to have timed it for
This
that.
is the same in Scotland, which is also so I don't know if any of you have paid any attention to what happened in Scotland in the last 2 hours. But the First Minister was ambushed as he got out of a lift. It was like, honestly, it was like a thick of it moment. He emerged from the lift and there were literally like 100 journalists there, and he genuinely looked like a startled deer for a moment, and then said, I welcome the general election, but really this is a shitty sign of contempt from Westminster because this is in the middle of the Scottish school holidays, which start in the last week of June, and they always have. And it is a good point that there is a lot of people in Scotland who will probably have to very rapidly apply for postal votes because they were going to be on holiday on the 4th of July, like outside of the country.
But there is nothing more SNP than
that. That was
calling
literally
this election
the
shows
second.
contempt for Scotland.
Yes. We welcome the fact that there's a general election, but it's being called at the most inconvenient moment. By the way, I did hear the SNP has not finished selecting its candidates. Neither has Labour.
Neither's Tories either, to be fair.
Yeah, the Tories, it's less of an issue because it doesn't really matter who they select as their candidates because there isn't any kind of like democratic element to it. But like Labour, presumably there is an issue of this just gives Labour HQ the opportunity to just push through anyone they want.
I want to get into this now because we've done the Sunak speech. We've established that we all think that Labour's going to win the general election.
Yeah, we're going to have 400 briefcase wankers.
I can't wait. I want to get into sort of where we think things will be in individual candidates, because we spoke a little bit earlier about like Islington North, what would happen with Corbyn if he's not selected, if he runs as an independent, that kind of thing. I also wanted to hear Callum, your thoughts on where the SNP may end up at the end of this. You've probably
Fucked.
got.
I was
your
just about to
thoughts
ask
there.
him that as well, Swiss.
Yeah, fucked is your short answer there. Because I mean, how many MPs have they got at the moment? Is it?
Well,
They've got
40, I believe.
4, I
right.
think.
So they have just over 40, and the thing is, the new boundaries obviously. So Scotland has lost 2 seats in this election, as in they had 59, now they're down to 57, which is fine. It's proportional. Now the thing is that the SNP have a lot to lose in the central belt, and there have been some wild maps recently. But it's generally sort of thought that the SNP are vulnerable in Fife, Lothian, and Glasgow. So, for anyone who doesn't know, Lothian is the region around Edinburgh. Fife is the peninsula to the north of Edinburgh, where places like Dunfermline and St Andrews are, and then obviously Glasgow in the west. That's the places where the SNP are most vulnerable, because they have only ever held on pretty marginally in those places. However, it's the worst case scenario, I think, is that the SNP get wiped out. Current electoral calculus, like the electoral calculus is the broad sort of prediction suggests that the SNP will probably lose about 30 seats, going from 48 to 19. So
I've
the
just brought
SNP,
up a table on screen here, by the way, of MPs elected in
yeah.
2019
So
versus
yeah,
current
the
makeup.
SNP. So 2 big things, right? Ullapa hold the seats of Haddingtonshire or East Lothian and Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath. And those are both Labour target seats. Labour won them in 2017, the SNP won them in 2019, and then both MPs defected to Ullapa for different reasons at different times. They, as far as I know, are both standing again, and they're expected to be 2 of the strongest Labour gains. Labour also currently hold the seat of Rutherglen in Lanarkshire, and they're expected to hold that. That will be their 4th safest seat, because they obviously still hold that seat in Edinburgh. Then they're expected to win 2 or 3 seats around Edinburgh and Midlothian, all the seats in Glasgow, as well as a bunch of seats on the west coast. The
From what I've seen of
really
election
fighting them
maps,
in places like Ayrshire and Stirlingshire, and my own seat in Cumbernauld is already looking like a marginal. It's about 51-49 in terms of the prediction on who will win my constituency.
I
from
just
what
want to
I've
add quickly, and then I'll let you continue. NA in the chat has recommended me the Wikipedia page for candidates standing in the 2024 general election. So this will be useful if we want to look at certain seats and who's going to be in contention there. But carry on with what you're saying.
From
Another
what
thing.
I've
Oh, sorry.
just want to quickly say, from what I've seen of election maps, UK's UK map of the nowcast, as they call it, or he calls it. From what I've seen of Scotland, the SNP, if an election was held today, would basically be a Highlander party. They would only exist in the Scottish Highlands and basically be wiped out everywhere
So,
else.
so actually, I hate to be this kind of person, but actually, the Highlands is only really 4 constituencies. It'd be better to say that they'd be a northeastern party,
Yeah,
because most of the seats that the SNP would hold would be places like Dundee, Arbroath, North Perthshire, Aberdeen, that kind of area. Whereas the West, that's the Highlands, is actually just Argyll, Inverness-shire, and Caithness, Sutherland, and Ross. And Caithness, Sutherland, and Ross is going to be probably a Lib Dem gain. They'll probably hold on to Inverness. Argyll and Lochaber they'll probably hold on to as well. In the real central bit, they'll probably hold on to bits of Perthshire, but they are kind of more eastern constituencies. But yeah, it does look as if they might be wiped out in the central belt. minus places like Cumbernauld, Falkirk, Edinburgh South West, and Ayrshire.
The one thing that's particularly interesting is apparently Labour's predicted to win those islands in Scotland. I can't remember what the...
Nahalin and Anshire.
Yeah,
So
those ones.
let me explain. That is very specific. One, the SNP didn't have a particularly strong hold of that constituency. Two, the SNP MP there, I believe, actually resigned the whip over issues related to party policy and independence. Three, pretty much people who vote there based on religion. And the Southern Isles, the Uish and the Isle of Barra, are majority Catholic and majority Labour. And it's only really the Isles of Lewis and Harris and North Uist that vote SNP. Plus, the idea is I don't know whether or not the former SNP candidate might be standing as an independent. I don't know the details in Helen and Shear.
So,
Yeah,
I suppose.
there's also the Shetland Islands as well, but those
Well,
are predicted
Orkney and
to go with the
Shetland are
Democrats.
strong Lib Dem.
Yeah, they're predicted to go Lib Dem according to the
Speaking of
nowcast.
Lib Dem, how many seats do you think the Lib Dems are going to get in this general election?
I don't know,
Ooh, that's
40,
a good
50,
question.
I'd say.
Do we not think that they'll get back to they won't get back to their sort of 2010, 2005 era peak?
Well, in 2010 they had something like 57 seats. They're not winning that many.
No.
Well, I'd say this much, because I actually wanted to speak about the Lib Dems earlier with regards to how they would do, particularly with South West England. I don't live in the South West, but I do live around the Southern England area, around about that part. And what I can say is that I would not be surprised if the Tory party was all but completely wiped out in the southwest of England, because the issue that has happened in the southwest recently, and you've probably seen this on the news if you've paid attention to it, is sewage dumping in rivers. Essentially, water companies have been dumping sewage in the rivers of the southwest of England.
I can't
and that
imagine
has
that
led...
Devonshire thing with the parasites last week. Well,
Yes,
that can't have helped.
it was related to that. It was related to sewage dumping. So in southern Devon, as one instance, there was an outbreak of a parasite which made its way into the water supply because of sewage dumping in the rivers, and that made its way into the water supply and began infecting people. And I think about a few dozen people got infected with the parasite as a result, and that has been an ongoing issue for quite a while now. Not to the same extent as that, where it's gotten that bad. That was particularly bad. But the overall issue of sewage dumping has been a real major concern in southwest England. And so as a result, people in southwest England are extremely angry with the Conservatives, and there has been huge support for Liberal Democrats in that region of Britain. And I really would not be surprised if the Tories were completely wiped out in southwest England. I know for a fact they're going to lose pretty much every single seat in Cornwall. I know that for a fact. I suspect they'll lose loads of seats in Devon, and they'll lose quite a lot of seats in Avon and Somerset. The only place where I think they could still hang on is Dorset, because that's a very, very old area. But outside of Dorset, I think they'll just get completely decimated in southwest England.
And it
because
still
of
looks
sewage
like
dumping.
in Dorset. In Dorset, they could still lose about half the seats that they have there. Like, it looks as if they could lose all of Bournemouth to Labour, South Dorset and that area to Labour, as well as West Dorset and North Dorset to the Liberals.
I was going to add as well that
lose...
I would agree with what you're saying about the Southwest, because not only is that obviously an area where the Lib Dems previously did do very well in and had a lot of representation, but if you look at, I think we did have one or two by-elections in the past few years in that part of the country as well. And obviously those are some of the ones that we've seen the big old... Well, I mean, we've seen a bunch of by-elections with big old swings away from the Tories, but The Lib
Who-
Dems
Yeah,
who's
got
you
Also
had
seen
a
a few
by-election.
defections, please.
Who's the
You had a
tractor porn
you had a
guy?
by-election in Hornerton, which was in Devon, and the Tories got completely decimated there. Lib Dems won it by like over 10,000 majority, I think, and that's just a sort of epicenter of the discontent towards Tories there. But with regards to Dorset, as you mentioned before, I can see Northwest and East Dorset constituencies voting Lib Dem, but I don't think Bournemouth will go Labour in the end. And I think the reason for that is because
Hmm.
Bournemouth is basically the Florida of Britain. It's a very
Okay.
old constituency,
I have a
and
counterpoint. Reform.
reform
Strong
could be.
reform performance in Bournemouth.
Yes, that is something which I can definitely see, that the Tory vote could be split, allowing Labour to come through the middle, and that is something that I will concede.
Especially with tactical voting, possibly from Liberals.
I want to
Yes.
ask you guys. I want to sort of ask you a blitz of a few questions here because I want to hit up a few different areas to talk about different
Right.
parties and how
If you-
they might fare.
Out of curiosity, Swiss, what did you make of like some of the defections that happened before this TGE was announced?
Well, I mean the Elphic defection.
right.
Man, that was
That
interesting.
sounds like a John le Carre novel, doesn't it? The Elphic
The
defection.
Elphic defection, yeah. That was another thing that I was going to do in a roundup video on this channel before the bloody general election got called. I mean, first of all, it was kind of like, oh, another defection. That's interesting. But then when you find out that it's apparently like, you know, someone who's pretty on the right of the Tory party who's jumped ship over to Labour, it seemed really strange. It made you think, right? Well, what has she been offered in order to do this? What might she get down the line? The fact that obviously there are a bunch of Labour.
Well, she said she
especially-
wasn't standing for re-election. I think.
Yeah,
it
well,
was
that
genuinely-
helps, doesn't it? That certainly helps.
I genuinely think it was maybe just I think it's just internecine Tory politics. It's like this is just a spit in Sunak's eye. It's nothing more than that, really.
But
It was to
basically,
do with immigration, apparently. That's what she claimed anyway,
well,
that it
because
was
she's
because
the
of
MP for
immigration.
Dover, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
she
amazed.
is.
Even though immigration is not actually as big an issue in Dover as it is in some of the other constituencies in Kent. Like the boats don't land in Dover.
She was one of our most right-wing MPs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think
another
that's why
thing-
you got everyone in Labour pissed off at her joining.
Well, it did rile up people in Labour, especially if you know whoever's still left on the left in Labour, going, well, hang on a minute, you've got Jeremy Corbyn booted out, Diane Abbott whip suspended, but here you are welcoming one of the most right wing Tories into the
Oh
fold.
yeah,
Like,
it wasn't
you
a
know.
good look. I
Just
think
the-
I just realised we were talking about the Liberals, and I think something that everyone seems to forget is that the Liberals, they do have a new heartland, Surrey and Oxford.
Yes, that's an area that they
Currently, it looks as if the Liberals will win most seats in Oxford. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, not Oxford. Surrey. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of the 10 seats in Surrey would go Liberal, and 2 would go Labour. And then they would
Breaking
win
news.
1, 2, 3, 4 of the 7 Oxfordshire seats.
Breaking news here. Apparently, Rishi is streaming his first election rally at 8 p.m. live on X, formerly
Yeah,
Twitter,
I saw that.
according to Craig. Which is in
Tweeted out. Yeah.
10 minutes time. So what I want to do, I wanted
Also,
to
I
blitz
heard
through a few
he's starting
questions
a
to you.
national campaign tour tomorrow. I don't know where he's visiting, but he's.
I hope he gets on a bus and comes to my town. What I want to do, I want to ask you guys a few questions, and I'll get your thoughts, but I want you to try and keep your answers fairly short and succinct, so we only spend maybe a minute or two on each thing.
That-
'Cause I want to
That's
hit
fair,
those up
Swiss.
before we
I've probably only got like 15 minutes left before I have to leave the stream.
That's why I'm going to be quick with it. Okay. First of all, George Galloway, is he keeping his seat in the general election, do you think?
It
No.
really depends on
No.
how pissed off his voters are. The voters are still with like Gaza, but I'd say unlikely.
No,
No.
is
No,
my answer.
absolutely not.
He only won that seat because the Labour candidate got removed at the last minute. That seat was a complete mess. It was just filled with weirdo candidates who were doing dodgy stuff and got withdrawn at the last minute. So No, he only won it because of luck, and he wouldn't have won it had it been a normal contest. So no, he's going to lose his seat, and by extension, probably might be one of your questions, but by extension, the Workers' Party of Britain is also not going to win a single seat either.
It's not even going to get more than about I would say less than 2%, maybe 1.5% nationally.
I would say it wouldn't even get 1%, to be honest.
I think I think it will depend on the individual candidates they put up in the particular seats they go for.
Well, if they did that, well, if they're like that cricket player that had no idea what NATO was.
Oh,
True.
where he sort of asked about like leaving NATO would be able to help us lower immigration or something like that. Right. Anyway, like I said, it's Blitz. It's a fire round. You're giving me your answer about Galloway. Thank you very much. The Green Party. What are the Green Party's prospects for seats in this general election? Do you think?
I think they will
one or
lose.
two.
I think they will lose Brighton and gain Bristol Central.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, one or
think
two seats.
I actually think the opposite. I think they'll keep Brighton Central, but lose Bristol or fail to win Bristol. But I think
Is it
Bristol
Brighton
will
Pavilion?
Brighton Pavilion. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant to say. Brighton Pavilion.
That's right.
But yeah, they'll keep that seat because I do think the Greens have built up quite a strong base over the years, even with Caroline Lucas going. But I don't think they'll keep Bristol. I don't think they'll gain Bristol Central because I do think that the Labour surge in vote share will be enough to keep them in, but I think it will be a very, very close marginal in Bristol Central.
Would you be willing to accept that maybe there might be an incredibly narrow Green gain?
It's possible, but I don't think it will be likely. If I had to make a prediction, I could see Debonair's vote share, her majority being reduced to less than 1,000 votes. I could see
would
that
just
happening.
Just to throw my 2 cents in on it, I would probably err on the side of expecting a Green MP in Brighton rather than Bristol. But I accept that the possibility.
If anything, I think the Greens would probably need to take another 5 or 10 years before they gain that seat, and people are kind of getting fed up with Labour after being in government for a while.
I heard that Bristol is actually a lot more marginal than people think, especially given the local election results and the sort of general anti-Labour feeling in that city.
There's probably a good chance they get no MPs.
That's also possible. Yeah, they could lose both. Or
I'll read another comment here, and then I'll blitz through with some more questions. And on the previous one had said, I could possibly see Galloway keeping his seat, depends on how strong the Labour candidate is in that seat. Reform UK, quick one, easy one. Are they getting any MPs?
After the fiasco?
Reform UK will hold Lee Anderson's seat and nothing else.
No, I disagree.
No,
I disagree.
I think what will happen with Reform is I think that Reform will essentially pull a UKIP, but on a smaller scale, where Douglas Carswell kept his seat, but UKIP got a large-ish vote share, but went nowhere with it because it was so spread out. I think the same will happen to Reform. Lee Anderson will keep his seat, but that'll be it. And they won't gain any other seats because their vote share will be spread far too thin.
I
think
they'll keep Ashfield. I think Ashfield is going to be like you'll have Labour standing that are trying to do their best. The Tories will be nowhere. Reform, and then the Ashfield Independent Party. They came close to unseating the MP there several times before with such an unpopular person as Lee Anderson. I think it's possible that the Independents might just narrowly gain Ashfield in a three-way race with Reform and Labour.
All right. Next question for you guys. If Jeremy Corbyn stands as an independent in Islington North, does he win?
Yeah.
No.
50-50,
yes.
I would say. It depends greatly upon who
If
the
it's
Labour
Paul, if it's
candidate is. The one thing that I
if
will
it's Paul
say
Mason, then yeah, I'd say Corbyn would win.
Yeah, I think that's realistic. If it's Paul Mason, I think Corbyn will win because he'll be such a charlatan that people won't back him. But
That's
if it's
possible, yeah.
but
if
it's
it's
a
generic Labour candidate.
Yeah, generic
then
Labour candidate, it becomes a lot more likely they win because I think it very well could be a similar situation to, if anybody remembers who this man was it Who was the guy who was a Tory who defected because he was very pro Remain, whose name began with Dominic? Was it Grieve?
Dominic Grieve.
Yeah, Dominic Grieve. I think it will be similar to Dominic Grieve, where he'll win a very big portion of the vote, but ultimately fail at the final hurdle. I think that is what would happen with Corbyn if it was generic Labour, but if it's Paul Mason, yeah, Corbyn will win because Paul Mason's a
Well,
charlatan.
I was going to say, I just looked at it. So Dominic Grieve, so the Liberals didn't stand against him. He beat Labour. Dominic Grieve got 29% and the Tories got 56%. It was one of the few constituencies where the Tories actually, the majority went down massively.
It depends if there's like a Gaza candidate that's also standing in Islington North as well that might siphon some votes off Corbyn.
Well, see, the
Yeah,
thing is,
that-
why would a pro-Gaza candidate stand against Corbyn?
Because they're thick as pig shit.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
exactly.
of course.
Because
Okay. So the question would be: do you think it could just be an absolute circus in Islington North with like
I'm
5
gonna
different
say-
independent candidates?
I'm going to say that if Corbyn does stand in Islington North, I think he's going to win it.
Yeah.
I think that he's represented the seat for 40 odd years. I think he's fairly well regarded by his constituents. And I think that considering the size of his majority, even though obviously it was a Labour majority when he was there with Labour, I think that there's a lot of those votes that will carry over to Corbyn specifically. And considering that, this is going to be a election where, the tide is rising for Labour, it's falling for the Tories. There's zero risk of vote splitting between Corbyn and Labour, allowing anyone else in through the middle, I think. So I think Corbyn will end up holding it. Lee Anderson, on the other hand, I don't know.
I'm probably more in agreement with you on that. By the way,
The one
how do you
thing
think
I-
Diane Abbott
You
will
have
do?
to.
Sorry, go on, Cameron.
Go on, Cam.
So yeah, I think everyone's keep in mind about the amount of activists that will party into the north actually campaign for Corbyn.
Oh, there'll be a load of door knockers for Corbyn, won't there?
But it's not just that as well. There's also Galloway's party's going to endorse Corbyn.
That
also
could
a
help.
factor with that.
Yeah, the idea being that if there was no one expressly standing on a similar platform to Corbyn, so say Corbyn is the only left-wing pro-Gaza candidate, and there was no independents, no one else standing on the similar platform, no spoiler candidates, and it was just him against Labour, Liberal, Tory, Green, then if the Greens didn't stand, then I think he could win it.
I think
Well, the
actually,
And I think
Greens
it would really depend on the Labour candidate. Like if I was Labour, I would say, do you know what? Screw all of this like triangulation on this one seat. We want to put in the most left wing, most pro Gaza person that's still in the Labour Party. Make them the candidate in Islington North, just to defeat Jeremy Corbyn.
I think Corbyn himself as a personality and a known entity would probably count for more than
Possibly.
other people standing in that election, regardless of what their views are.
The other option would be for Labour to essentially accept that they could lose it. What's one MP?
I think just wanted to bring up a couple points with reference to the Labour activists. I actually think this might backfire on Corbyn and support him because Corbyn's activists, as were proven by the 2019 general election, have a tendency to drive people away from them than they do actually get people on side.
That's because they're insufferable cranks.
Oh yes, I know, but that's the thing. That's the point why I think they
I
would.
agree. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, that's why I think they would potentially drive people away, so that might help Corbyn. With Galloway as well, it's the same situation. The guy's a grifter, and he would also drive people away. And the one thing I will say with almost absolute certainty is, regardless of what the result is in Islington North, I can guarantee you that the Islington North constituency battle will be the single most toxic campaign of the entire general election and one of the most toxic in British history. up there with the Bermondsey by-election in
Oh,
terms of how toxic it will be.
I mean, I could believe that someone might get shot or
I
stabbed.
I wouldn't go that far, but I do think you will see a lot of people
Well,
throwing about accusations and a whole load of smearing nonsense, where you'll just basically have people, especially on the Tory and Reform side, if they run there, using the word anti-Semite at least 5 million times.
No,
to be fair, I could also see the. I could also see the.
I think that some
I could
right-wing loon might try and Shinzo Abe Jeremy Corbyn in the street.
Yeah, but to be honest, I think you might find some of that with the Labour lot as well, if it's the more right-wing Starmer lot that try to campaign there. But I think
by the way-
the Islington North lot might also be a bit more tolerant of.
The other thing as well, and Liberal Zardos has pointed this out here, is I actually think Starmer will put quite a bit of resources into the seat, and the reason for that is because, as Liberal Zardos has highlighted here, one MP, but Corbyn will forever be a thorn in Starmer's side.
Also, speaking of Liberals, you remember how we said things can only get wetter?
Yeah.
Official statement from the Liberal Democrat media team: things can only get wetter. They beat us to it. The Liberal Democrats meme squad is out in force.
We're on the cusp of Rishi Sunak's. Oh, right. Okay, we've got a video from Rishi Sunak here as well, saying that he's just got in from announcing the election.
Yes, Swiss. By the way,
jacket off. Yes, John.
Oh, Swiss. Remember the Survation poll?
Oh yes. I brought up some polling on the screen earlier, but we didn't get a chance to chat about it. I'll do that shortly. I just wanted to ask you guys before this Sunak event launches. My final question for you: does Farage come back as Reform leader for the election?
No,
he has he's just been on the news, and he said he's going to think about being a candidate overnight. So he's going to decide by tomorrow.
Because we were told, someone in the chat said there was a Reform press conference tomorrow morning, so that'll be Farage letting us know if he's doing it or not.
It'll be funny if the Reform conference is literally Uncle Nige is coming back to do this campaign, and this actually leads me onto a campaign that's going on within right-wing circles. Essentially, it's the Zero Seats campaign, as it's colloquially known, and the goal of the campaign, and this is all right-wing conservatives, the goal of the campaign is to get the Tories 0 seats. The reason for this is because these right-wing conservative people see the Conservative Party as not conservative and not right-wing, and instead see them as basically socialists and
wait a second. This is just Peter Hitchens.
No, it's not just Peter Hitchens. It's many people.
No. As in, this is what Peter Hitchens has been saying for the last 20 years.
I've
met Zero Seaters.
Conservatism in Britain is the Tory party.
But this is an interesting point, right? If that is your politics and you are of that view, given that this is the general election where the writing's on the wall already, and you're going right, the Tories are going to get obliterated, Labour's going to win, it's a done deal. Surely this is the election where you go right. Well, I'd rather vote for the full fat butter version of my views in Reform UK than voting for the pale imitation in Sunak's Tories.
They view Reform UK as sellouts.
The idea is
relative to the Tories, at least. I assume that they're seen as
they just see Reform UK as like the even more corporatist.
No, what they want is for the Tory party and the Reform. Basically, they want the total destruction of the British electoral right, so that they can be the masters of any new right-wing movement in Britain. Basically, if they can eliminate the electoral conservatives, then they can hold the balance of whoever becomes the new electoral conservatives. It's like Canada in 1997 or 1992, when the Progressive Conservative Party was wiped out completely. They lost all but 2 seats, and Canadian conservatism moved to a new party.
1992, Cameron. Callum,
1993. But
Yeah.
either way, that's what the zero seat movement is all about. And basically, it's not just Reform UK. But the whole point of it is literally, as it says, to get the Tory zero seats. So what these people are willing to do is engage in mass tactical voting. So if there's a Tory Labour marginal, they will vote Labour. If there's a Lib Dem Tory marginal, they will vote Lib Dem. If there's anywhere where they can reduce the Tory majority by enough by voting for Reform or whoever to get the opposition in, they will do it. The whole point of this campaign is, as it says, get the Tories 0 seats by any means necessary, and then create a new right-wing ultra-nationalist political party to promote true conservatism and true right-wing values. This is what they
It's like
want.
that meme where the two people shake hands and it's like, you know, lefties and liberals, ultra right-wing nationalist conservatives getting the Tories out.
Do you guys
You know?
remember Academic Agent?
I'm
What,
about to
sorry?
just
yeah, that-
leave, but
Yes,
Swiss,
I
I'm just
remember
about
him.
to
Yeah.
I
leave.
remember it.
Swiss, I'm just about to leave, but
You're just about to leave. I brought your poll up on
yeah.
screen, by the way, John. The Salvation
Okay.
one here that's got Labour 21 points ahead of the Tories there on 48%.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So I believe the Tories have gone up by 2, so that might imply that the Tories might get close to their 30% like they usually do, even in a bad election. So who knows? I could be wrong on that, but it really depends on whether or not Labour's going to go up or down, I guess. But one last thing before I go, Swiss, I just have one question. Does everyone think the Tories are going to be on 3-digit seats or 2-digit seats come this general election result?
Oh, that's a
Three
good
digits.
question.
Three digits.
Three
They will not
digits.
lose. They will not go below 100 seats.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think if we're being realistic, the Tories' range, at least for me personally, is between 150 to 202 seats. That's what I think their range is. Maybe
I'd
even a
go-
bit more than that.
I'd say
I-
100. I'd say 140 to 220.
Gonna
I
head
had-
off now,
I-
Swiss. Bye
All
for
right.
now.
No worries. Thanks for joining.
Honestly,
I'll
I'd
just
say-
add, I'd previously thought that the Tories would probably end up getting around 200 seats or so, like if you'd asked me a few months back. But I think you're definitely going to get into maybe the mid hundreds potentially now.
I'd say anything between 100 and 130.
Oh, that low.
Do you
That's
really
low.
think they'll be that bad?
Yeah, it's the tactical voting across the country. The Lib Dems coming from one side, Reform squeezing the right wing vote, and then Labour coming across many of
And
the
then just-
traditional. Like,
And then I guess just
really a
Tory
bloodbath.
voters staying home as
I was
well.
gonna
for
say,
that
yeah.
I mean, you're going to lose
turnout-
every
turnout
single
will
seat
be
in
a big thing.
Wales, most seats in Scotland. You're going to
Well,
lose
actually,
loads of seats
I'm not
in
so
the
sure
Blue
about
Wall.
Scotland.
They're gonna
I
lose a
actually
couple
think
of
that the
seats in
Tories
Scotland.
could hold on to most of their seats in Scotland.
But they're not going to hold on to all 6, surely.
Well,
No, I don't
well,
think
no.
they
See,
will.
the thing is, the boundary changes means they'll probably only have 5 seats in Scotland, notionally.
Are the boundaries changing, or are we still using the ones we've been using for the better part of like 15
No,
years?
no.
At this
The new
stage?
boundary changes were placed last year. We are on new boundaries now.
Ah, right. Okay, right.
And because of the reduction in the number of Scottish seats, I think, from what I remember, Scottish Tories hold the Borders, Dumfries, and then also Galloway, as well as Buchan and the Banff coast. And my understanding was that essentially they're just going to hold all of those. Like the Tories are so ingrained.
Sorry
in
to
those
interrupt
areas.
you. We have Rishi Sunak's live election rally now
Okay.
ready. If it. Oh, it's James Cleverly for some reason. Okay, sorry. Carry on talking. I'll let you talk over Cleverly.
So I think the Tories could lose a place like Galloway, because that's the current Scottish Secretary's seat, and he is not popular.
Alistair Jack.
Alistair Jack, that cunt.
He's quite dry, isn't he?
Well, to be
Drier than
completely honest,
Sunak.
the thing about Alistair Jack is that essentially he's spent his entire time in office attempting to dismantle the Scottish Parliament.
Oh,
Like
I'm up for that. I'm down
he
for that.
recently set up a body, or intends to set up a body, which would scrutinise all pieces of legislation passed by the Scottish Parliament, with the intention of essentially shooting down anything that they pass.
See, in our party, we definitely support the membership. Definitely support scrapping devolution.
Well, of course they do, but the thing is, most Scottish people don't.
Yeah,
And
that's the thing I was
importantly, most
gonna.
Scottish people in his constituency, because the thing is, he's not a particularly secure MP. He has a reasonable size, but not particularly big majority in a seat that was previously held by the SNP. And if I'm correct, it was an SNP seat long before 2015. It was like one of their core constituencies. So I think that if there was going to be a big scalp in Scotland, it would probably be that. I don't know where Douglas Ross is standing. I don't actually think he is standing.
No, he's not.
He's not, because he's an MSP, but I think he's not standing for re-election. But I think that the seat that he's standing in was always going to go SNP.
Is he Murray?
I think the Scottish Tories will probably win 4 seats.
4, yeah.
I think they could probably win 3-1. I think they would keep the border areas but lose the other one.
You underestimate quite how strong they are with landowners in our Aberdeenshire. It's particularly in the area called Buchan, which is essentially all landed estates.
Can
The
I
buck
just
stops here.
can I
But
just
just
update my prediction a little bit? That I wanna say Tories closer to 100 seats than 200. I'd like to update that a little bit. And they had said, I think Tories between 130 and 180, also adding that there've been some projections it could be as low as just under 100. And I think, Dan, you just said that you thought it could be pretty low. I'm giving my imminent nowcast. I'm going to say 137 seats. I've plucked that out
it
the air.
seems that I'm the one who has the Tories at their most optimistic here, and my most optimistic is having them lose
my most
Blair
optimistic
style.
was 220.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, true. You had them at 220.
I think the Tories will do better than anyone thinks, but still very badly. Like, I think the Tories, I'd say 150 to 220. I think
But
that's what I said earlier.
I will actually do what I did for the 2017 election this year, though, and I will go through all of the seats and once again make seat-by-seat predictions of how I think it's going to go, and then I will have a final total of what I think.
Northern Ireland will be interesting. I know no.
I was really crap at Northern Ireland last time.
Well,
hear me out.
Hear me out. DUP is going to lose. What is it? Is it Belfast East?
Yeah, Belfast East.
Like, is that the only seat they still hold? I think they'll lose that to Alliance.
In Belfast, yeah, that's the only seat they still hold. It was a very tight marginal. If I had to make my own prediction for Northern Ireland, I actually think Northern Ireland will be one of the most boring areas for this election. It won't be like 2019, where it was actually very interesting what could happen there. I think it will be boring. I think what will happen in Northern Ireland, it will be Belfast East will go Alliance Party. Lagan Valley will go Alliance Party because of what has happened with Jeffrey Donaldson, allegedly. And what has happened, and I also think that Fermanagh and South Tyrone might just go to the UUP, but it will be very, very close.
Yeah,
either way.
Fermanagh and South Tyrone.
Oh dear. But anyway, as I continue on, but outside of until Callum comes back, but outside of those 3 seats, everyone's going to stay the same. Foyle will stay SDLP. South Belfast SDLP. There's not really going to be any change because Northern Ireland has essentially disappeared from the map again in British politics over the past 5 years because they're just not in Westminster politics anymore. And I think the DUP have, just quickly, I think the DUP have gone as low as they can and Sinn Féin have gone as high as they can. So here's Rishi.
All right.
Well, the thing I was just going to say was that Fermanagh and South Tyrone will be one of the most marginal seats in the country, as always.
Agreed. Now let's listen to let's listen to Sunak.
Our Lord and Saviour Sunak.
And I can tell by this reception that you are up for this general election.
Oh,
Now,
God. He's such a fucking supply teacher.
the last 2 years have been.
He's got his sleeves rolled up,
I know
bro.
that. You know that. We've been dealing with COVID, which so badly upended our way of life. And then the huge spike in our energy bills caused by Putin's invasion of Ukraine. But together, as we learnt this morning, we have got inflation down from 11% to 2%. We have delivered on my first priority to drive inflation back to normal.
1 out of 5.
1 out of 5 ain't bad.
Now, we've shown the country that it is only this Conservative Party that can deliver the economic stability, the foundation of our national success. The economy is growing again, faster than Germany, France, and the United States. Wages have been rising faster than prices for 10 months now. The economy has turned a corner. Friends, our plan is working.
God, this is genuinely more bullshit than normal. Like Rishi Sunak just has the incredible capacity to make nothing sound
With this
sincere.
hard-won economic stability comes a choice.
The
Who do
Pope
you
is thick in
trust
the air.
to turn that foundation into a secure future for you, your family,
Also,
and
Michael
our
Gove
country?
is trying
Now
so
is the
hard
moment for Britain to
not
choose
to
its
jitter
future, to
from the amount of
decide whether we
cocaine
want
he's
to
just
build
taken.
on the progress that
They're
we've made,
all
or
standing so
risk going
solemnly
back
and
square
serious.
one
White
with
there.
no plan
So old
and no
now.
certainty. Now, we all
Like,
know
is it
that
just
the
me or
only
does Michael
certainty with
Gove look as
Labour
if he's
is that they will
stupid,
run out of
like
money
70?
and raise your taxes.
Like, God, Michael Gove looks old.
He does. He does.
And as Jeremy showed us just the other week, Labour would cost every working household more than £2,000 extra in taxes. Now, this election takes place at a time when the world is more dangerous than it's been since at any point since the end of the Cold War. Putin's Russia is waging a brutal war in Ukraine, and he'll not stop there if he succeeds. That war has also made all too clear the risk to our energy security. In the Middle East, the forces of Islamist extremism threaten regional and ultimately
It's very
global
serious,
stability.
solemn faces
China
listening to him,
is
isn't
seeking
it?
to dominate the 21st
They all look a
century
bit,
by stealing a
you know.
lead in technology.
Mm.
And migration is being weaponized by hostile states to threaten the integrity of our borders. Now, these uncertain times call for a clear plan and bold
Is
action
it just
to
me or
chart
does
a
it really
course
feel like these
to a
are the
secure
people
future?
gathered in the fucking
And it
Führer
is we
bunker?
Conservatives, and only we Conservatives,
It feels
who are
like
prepared
you
to take
remember
that
when
bold action
Boris
to
Johnson
ensure that better
resigned
future
and a few
for our
people came to
country
line up to
and
wish
our
him off
children.
outside Downing Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. But no, come on, this does look as if it's taking place inside the Führer bunker.
They're all hot and sweaty. The generator's not working.
They've all been absolutely off their faces on methamphetamine for 5 days straight.
They've just killed Blondie the dog. Steiner's not coming.
Across Europe, the
Oh my God,
penny
you know what's a great
dropped
idea?
fast as the
Let's
right
call an
of
election. Fuck it. Let's
But
just
Labour
call a general election.
government
That's the last thing they'll
and
expect.
enact a de facto amnesty for asylum seekers, making us a magnet for every illegal immigrant in Europe. In every way,
Meanwhile,
Labour would make our
Liz
country
Truss,
less
she's
secure.
not there, is she? I don't see Liz Truss.
Oh no, she wouldn't be invited. Surely
No,
not.
okay. Then that means that Liz Truss is Goering in Bavaria
Labour
trying
want
to
you to think
organise
that
a
this election
separate
is over
peace with
before
the
it's
Western
done.
Allies.
But we are going to fight. We are going to fight every day for our
Also,
values
I noticed
and
the
our vision.
suspicious
And the
absence
British
of Penny
people
Mordaunt.
are going to show Labour that
Yes,
they don't take
yes,
too
no
kindly
penny.
to being taken for granted.
No penny, no
Or Lord
trust.
Cameron.
I will say this is better than I expected, but it's still crap.
Yeah, I mean he's got some energy and he's got some sympathetic clapping around him.
On the
You
5th
know.
of July,
He's definitely had his coke this
will be
afternoon.
Prime Minister. And he is
Why
showing
didn't we get this Sunak
and
giving the
time
speech
again
outside
that
Downing
he will
Street?
take the easy way out and do anything to get power.
Because he
If
hadn't
he
had
was
his
happy to
uppers yet.
abandon all the promises that he made to become Labour leader once he got the
You
job.
remember when David Cameron was like pumped up Dave? Having a risk,
Yeah.
having a punt that pumps me up. This is like, you know, Sunak does that better.
If he
In
doesn't
this
Yeah,
have the
context,
also,
I'd say.
when Sunak
stick to
talks about
anything he
Starmer,
if he
having
doesn't
no
have the
no
courage
principles,
to tell people what he wants to do, and if
having
he
no
doesn't have
meaningful.
a plan,
He is
how
cooking when
can
he's
he
saying this.
possibly
Like,
be
Yeah,
trusted to
yeah.
lead
if
our
there's
country,
one thing that
especially at
Sunak
this,
actually
the most
has on
uncertain
Starmer,
of
it's
times?
that Starmer is a
Now,
sort of Machiavellian power grabber. The problem is that he's saying this as a non-domicile multi-billionaire
Now we
who
Conservatives
doesn't give a
have
shit
got
about Britain and has
with
already
Volvac
looked
to
out, you know,
secure
school
housing.
places for his children in
We're
California,
working for a Britain
and probably got
where we have
several
renewed confidence in
non-executive
ourselves and our
directorships lined up.
communities. A country where
You know,
hard
the
work
problem is
will be
that,
met
like,
with
if
fair
Boris
rewards, and there'll be
Johnson was still
opportunities
leader,
enjoyed
he
by the
might
previous
win.
generations will be there for
But
sure.
Sunak is just going to
A country where our
absolutely
defence
fuck
and our
them with this, because
security
he is
assured. So let's take
just
that message and that
the
vision of a
most
secure
kind
future
of
to every
uninspiring,
corner of our United
hypocritical.
Kingdom, and let's show
Yeah,
Labour
he is
that the
he is
British people
Britain's
will
supply
never be
teacher.
taken for
He's
granted.
here until the end of the school day. Oh, there's Lord Cameron.
I
He's
like
here
how
to.
he said Labour we can't let Labour take our country for granted. It's like, you're doing that.
The big problem
Oh,
is
listen to
that
the music, Rick Queen.
that's just generic bump. Why couldn't they just put on some like sort of German club music?
What on earth
I
is
wish
that music?
I wish he got to listen to his wife.
The
Clear
live
plan
That's
stream
our
of
slow.
it.
What is it with the
Oh wait, is
Tories
this
and
for what the Tory
rephrase
campaign thing
campaigns?
is? It was literally it was something along the lines of like, clear plan, great country,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
a doomed party, or something like that. I don't
What? Yeah. What is it with the Tories and like three phrase slogans? You know.
Repetition. I did this back in psychology for my GCSE, and it's basically repetition. Your short-term memory can remember 4 to 7 things at a time, and
Oh
so the Tories essentially have these three word campaign slogans, repeat them 1 million times, and it's short enough that it sticks in people's short-term memory, and through repetition, it just becomes
God.
remembered over and over again.
This
Strong
this
and
this
stable, coalition of chaos.
this reminds me
Get Brexit
of
done.
fucking. No, this reminds me of the fucking electoral slogan in Fallout. You know.
What, war never changes?
No. The thing like if times are tough, vote for someone from Vault 31 or something.
What? In that
Also,
photo,
Rishi Sunak has said that he will not meet Tory MPs of the 1922 committee. He has essentially refused to meet with the 1922 committee. He said that
Oh,
It's
so
because they'll be
basically.
because
livid.
they'll be chucking shoes at him like Bush.
oh
Yeah,
yeah, because
the SMS would be like
oh yeah, the
Bush going
reason
for a
why
press conference in Baghdad
the
in 2007.
yeah, the reason why he won't be meeting the 1922 committee is because there'll be more swear words chucked at him than at an
Oh, and
Australian pub
racial slurs.
meeting.
My apparently my boss. I was told by the guys in the Westminster office. Apparently, my boss was sat in front of the TV in our office, shouting expletives during his speech outside Number 10 at the telly.
Well,
Oh, I'm not surprised, because just before this was announced, when it was still in the rumour mill rather than official plan, there was a Tory Brexit MP, not named, of course, who basically said, "We're 20 points behind. What on earth is he thinking? We're going to get
didn't he describe the
smashed."
prime minister as a fucking lunatic?
Yeah, I mean,
That was leaked to the guy who runs Newsnight.
But
this
the thing is, do you
honestly,
have an election when you're 20 points behind now, or when you're 20 points behind in 3 months' time?
Yeah, but in 3 months' time, the NHS waiting list will be a bit better, right? There will be definitely flights through Rwanda in 3 months' time.
So is this idea that he did it to see off some kind of a bunch of 1922
I think it
letters?
genuinely was
Holy
just
water.
is just you can't fire me, I quit.
yeah,
I
I think at
don't
this
think it was
stage, that rumour that I spoke about earlier on in the stream of the 1922 committee being filled with loads of no confidence letters, I think that is actually true now. I don't think it's a rumour, because when you've got the
Oh, I
whole
found it by the
Tory
way. He said
party,
it was fucking madness. Why would the Conservatives go into an election 20 points behind in the polls? What the fuck is he thinking?
yeah, that's what the MP
He is
said.
a fucking lunatic.
Yeah, that's what the MP said, the Brexit one. And the fact
Makes
that
no
he's
sense.
refusing to meet with the 1922 committee, because here's the thing, If you call an election, the very first thing that you should do after your first stump speech, as he's done,
Go
is
talk
meet
to
with
your
the 19...
MPs.
Yeah, meet with the 1922 committee. You go to them and you basically say, right, an election's been called, we're having it, here's the plan, here's what we're going to do for campaigning, and here's what you need to say, and here's what our slogans are. That's what you would do. The fact that he's not meeting them means he knows that every single Tory MP is livid beyond description, and
Oh,
he doesn't
I've
want to deal
already.
with
I'm
it.
just reading here that Nicholas Watt of Newsnight lost count of the number of ministers who asked him what was going on. One said that an imminent general election was unfathomable, weird, and he said, "Why would you do this before any flights had taken off for Rwanda?" He said, "I thought that was the whole point."
No, but this is just this is just in line
It-
with
it-
previous cancelling HS2 to Manchester in Manchester. It's like, why are we surprised that he makes the most bizarre decision ever? Like,
Hear me out.
I love-
Rishi Sunak is in fact just a shit poster.
He's not just a tech bro. He's an edgelord.
Yeah. It turns out that Rishi Sunak got all of his political advice. All of his political advisors are actually just 4chan mods.
well, maybe Rishi Sunak is Liz Truss, because we all thought Liz Truss was a Lib Dem psyop, and she was in there. You know, she's really a Lib Dem since the 90s. And Rishi
Oh yeah,
is
no.
just Liz Truss with a
She
mask on.
did kill the Queen, as we all
Oh,
know. Right
God.
after she shook hands with the Queen, you can very faintly hear, "Well done, Agent 47. Now find an exit."
Let me make a serious point for just a moment, right? On the Rwanda bit that we were talking about, had you said something like they had penciled in some Rwanda flights for in June at some point?
Yeah.
Or the
Yeah.
because actually, if it's the case that, you know, election campaign now, Rwanda flight takes off, I don't know, midway through June or something.
Yeah, but
That's probably not a bad little spot in the calendar from Rishi Sunak's point of view, going, oh, right, we'll be in the midst of the election campaign, and on this week I'm able to bust out, look, a flight to Rwanda. Here's me doing Rwanda.
Yes.
Vote for me.
But it's not going to work because
No. I was
going to say, surely.
No, hang on. I wasn't for a moment suggesting it was going to work. Don't get me wrong that I was saying it was going to work. But I'm just saying that's what the plan was.
Those first few flights are all going to have the reason
that 5 people on them.
Not so many people round up is because there's going to be so many legal challenges that there's not going to be enough lawyers to do them for the flights, right? So all those first few flights will have people on that are lawyered up.
All the lefty
They'll have
lawyers will be
flights on the
campaigning
runaway.
for Labour.
They're going to have flights on the runaway in the campaign, but they won't take off, and it'll be even more embarrassing when it's going to happen in the campaign.
So basically, what's going to happen is the Rishi super plan of the Rwanda flights taking off mid-campaign and then throwing a celebration. In reality, because of all the legal challenges, they'll be in Heathrow Airport, but they'll be on the tarmac. So what will happen is the news will report that the Rwanda policy has been a failure because they're all still at Heathrow as they're still on the ground and they won't take off for another month. So congratulations, another genius plan.
By the way,
from
I
Rishi.
was watching Have I Got News for You last week. Jess Phillips was on it.
Right.
And I noticed when she was interviewed today that Jess Phillips had gotten a haircut, and I wonder, did she get a haircut knowing there was an election coming?
Well, the funny thing
also,
is,
the next, by the way, the next Have I Got News for You will have Lady Davidson on it. Ruth Davidson. So I imagine the Have I Got News for You will just be, shitting on the Tories fest.
It absolutely will. I just want to say, because this segues quite nicely, given that most of this stream so far has been shitting on the Tories fest, I want us to pivot very quickly to see the reaction to the calling of this general election from dynamic change man himself, Keir Starmer.
Before
he's missing his army uniform to announce the coup.
Regrettably, but he's got enough Union Jacks to compensate.
By the way, before we do, I just want to quickly say, apparently Rishi's live stream did not have any sort of noteworthy journalists at it, and the Sky correspondent was kicked out
Have you
of the
seen the video?
rally, according to Podge. How do you say that name?
Podge.
I'll just say Podge then. But yeah, according to Podge.
There's a video on Twitter of him getting manhandled out of the rally by security, and it's not a good look for the start of the campaign.
All right. Hello there, Sky Echo, by the way, who joins us as well. Right. Okay. Let's have a little look at what Changeman has got. NA says, "Don't put us to sleep with Starmer Swiss." Hey, look. I'm a responsible political broadcaster here. We've heard from Sunak.
Oh, by the way, I have already put in an order to buy some champagne.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Right. Okay. Oh, that is a bad frame to poor Starmer.
Oh,
Look at
Darren McCaffrey, Sky News, was physically manhandled. In fact, oh god, it wasn't just that he was manhandled.
Is there any other kind of manhandling?
No,
other than physical
excuse me,
manhandling?
As in, there's video of him being dragged out.
Oh no!
Live on Sky News.
Oh no! Okay.
By a bunch of
We'll have
guys
to
in
look at
high
that as
vis
well.
dragging him out and saying like, "You can't film," and then basically like forcing him down the corridor while he's continuing to broadcast, walking backwards down a hotel stay.
We've got some.
This day has really delivered.
We've got some punnery from Lee Ball here. Was he Beth Rugby tackled? Not bad. Not bad.
Well, actually, do you know what I'll do is I'll get the tweet and then I will copy it into the chat.
Thank you. This Starmer video I've got up is so low quality it looks like a deep fake.
That's just what Keir Starmer looks like.
Oh,
it looks like it's been produced by Dan Abbott.
It just
looks. God.
It looks AI generated, but
right,
maybe it is AI generated.
Oh.
Right. Anyway. So this is Starmer's response to the fact we have a general election.
Prime Minister has finally announced the next general election, a moment the country needs and has been waiting for, and where, by the force of our democracy, power returns to you. A chance to change for the better. Your future, your community,
Things can only get better.
Your country. Now, it will feel like a long campaign, I'm sure of that. But no matter what else is said and done, that opportunity for change is what this election is about. Over the course of the last 4 years, we've changed the Labour.
Oh God, he is putting me to sleep.
Returned it once more to the service of working people. All we ask now.
Oh, dynamic change, man. What are you doing?
And return Britain to the service.
Oh my God, he cannot. How can he say that with a straight fucking face?
The chat is literally spamming like snoozing emojis at us.
Well, Westminster runs on gossip at the best of times.
By the way, in the back, backstage private chat, I have posted that tweet of the guy
thank you.
Getting muscled out.
I will bring. I just very quickly want to do Ed Davey,
we need Ed
and then
Davey,
we'll do.
Was he got a cannon?
I hope he's got. No, they've just got their big winning here signs. If only they had. He should have held an umbrella up.
Today?
That would have been great.
I want him to stand on a bar chart.
Across the country, people are crying out for change, and this election is the chance to make that happen. In so many parts of the country, it's the Liberal Democrats who can beat the Conservatives, who've taken people for granted for so long. Every vote for the Liberal Democrats is a vote for a local champion, an MP who will fight for you, your family, and your community to get the fair deal.
I feel like the Liberal Democrats could really get very far if they just only campaigned on localism.
There's a lot of very scruffy-looking people standing behind them.
That's because that's what the Lib Dems look like.
I know. I'm not one to talk. I'm a bit of a scruffy individual.
No, but
myself,
look at them. Everyone in that image, you could say that's a Liberal Democrat.
He's got. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's got. There's a boy. There's a literal child there. There's just Anyway, I'm picking up on the wrong things here. I want to hear what's the content of what Ed Davies saying.
Excuses, and it's out of time.
It's the way they're all nodding.
and it's time to get this
Yeah.
Conservative government out of office.
More props.
And if we do, we can transform our politics.
Oh God, he's smiling a lot.
We can sort out the crisis in the health
It's like
and
Rishi.
care system.
Yeah.
We can get our economy
Oh.
back.
Well, no,
on
but see, the thing is,
Oh.
this is a person who actually
end
has
the sewage
emotions.
He
Like,
does.
okay,
It's true.
fine.
He reminds me of Hannibal Lecter.
Well, yeah. See, the thing is, hear me out. Ed, of the three main parties, Ed Davies is the only person who has any kind of meaningful personal life and like emotions.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Because his party doesn't matter, and therefore he has the opportunity to not really be scrutinized 24/7, and so actually is like a normal human being. Like, okay, he's still kind of weird because he's a Lib Dem, but you know.
Shall we see this person getting
Yeah.
manhandled?
Yeah.
oh, yeah, back to the
amazing.
Tory hating. This would be good.
Okey-doke. We've done a little bit of Labour and Lib Dem hating now. Back to the Tory hating, the main bread and butter of this election.
First campaign event.
At a Conservative Party launch. This is where the Prime Minister is going to speak in the next few minutes, and I'm being forcibly removed. We just simply wanted to have access tonight at Sky News, but unfortunately, we're told that because there are pool arrangements in place, we're not allowed to be here. This is, by the way, what we're trying to film is the campaign event where the Prime Minister is due to speak in the next couple of minutes. It's in front of Conservative activists. It's eventually trying to get across the message that we had in Downing Street today, talking about stability. I'm sure he's going to talk about the decision he's made. But as you can see, we just don't have access to it. It's not entirely clear why we don't have access to it. But as I say, this was meant to be the campaign launch for the Prime Minister, for the Conservative leader, in front of party activists.
Fuck up communication. Sorry, fuck up public relations and
during this campaign,
communications
you're
is
going
a
to go out and
party
knock on
challenge.
doors, etc. The hope, of course, of the Prime Minister is this is a decision, a gamble that he's taken. So we're going to be put into an elevator here. Our bags are up here. We're probably going to
be put into an elevator
because we're going to lose
How
contact. We're
bad
into an elevator with
can you fuck up for
I will hand
this
back to
to be
Rishi,
your
and hopefully we'll come
campaign
up
launch
live afterwards.
on this probably the second biggest news broadcaster in Britain?
I would say that this is up there, right, with two launches, the Change UK launch and the Alba Party launch. It's up there with them in terms of how awful it is, because if anybody remembers the Alba Party launch, where Alex Salmond was standing there for 5 minutes waiting for the stream to work, and it didn't, and just showed a load of panoramic images of Scotland, particularly Edinburgh. It's up there with that in terms of how disastrous it is. It's just this has just been so badly and haphazardly done. Like it's just like they've scraped it all together at the very last minute and have rushed to have a GE. I mean, if there's any
It's not
proof-
like that. It is that.
yeah, it's exactly. I mean, it really does just prove to me that this
Apparently, pretty much anyone. Well, the whole government didn't really know about this. Like the cabinet was informed this morning when he met the king, and that was why they had their meeting. But most of the junior ministers apparently had no idea until the media told them. Like they got it from watching the telly.
Yeah, so this is basically just a disaster.
How
for
do
the
you
Tories.
fuck up communications that badly?
I honestly think this is probably just going to set the tone for them moving forward. It's just going to be continual failure all throughout this entire campaign, and it's just going to get worse and worse. I honestly wonder if the Tories are actually going to have a cohesive message for this GE, or whether you'll have multiple different MPs saying multiple different things and just no cohesion whatsoever.
Guys, I want to tell you that I'm going to look to wrap up the stream shortly because we've been going for a good 2 hours 20 minutes, and as I say, I started this immediately after getting back in from 9 hours at work. But I want to. Have we got any more comments here? Blue Guy says, "Swiss, is it true that you'll be standing as a Workers' Party candidate in the upcoming election?" No, categorically, no.
Oh, I did post another tweet that you might want to have a look
Oh, you
at.
posted? Oh, Or this, we're getting into that. This is the right. Okay, set your watches, guys. I've said for the first time we're ending the stream. See how long it goes before the stream actually ends. What's the other thing you've linked me to here? After a decade at the top, the Ed Miliband sandwich shot has finally been dethroned.
Come on, show us all.
I'll screen share it. It's the same image that I shared earlier as well. It's just got a great caption to it this time. There we are. Wet Sunak.
Wet
Oh,
Sunak.
right. I want to leave you guys with a very, very short clip that describes just my feelings of absolute jubilation today at the calling of this general election. Not only that, but just the whole circumstances around it. The speech that we got to watch, the amazing fun that we've had on stream here tonight. I'm going to have an amazing next 6-7 weeks of my life doing this. I'm going to live and breathe it, and I'm going to love every minute of it. So I just want to play you this. This is how this general election makes me feel.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
There we go.
Oh, by the way, the Spectator has already prepared its like editorial thing. You know how the start of every copy of the Spectator is like the editor's note.
Mm-hmm.
This week it's Into the Valley of Death.
I shall fear no evil.
Yep. Calling a summer election would be madness for the Tories. Leading article in the New Spectator out tomorrow. Into the Valley of Death.
Just a quick one. What if Angela Rayner gets arrested during the campaign?
I really don't think she will. I honestly think that the whole Andrea Rayner thing is just a red herring that just hasn't gone anywhere. I mean, even Tory propaganda has basically dropped it outside of like the fringest of fringe at this stage.
I mean,
It just seems like a distraction, and I think that's how it will come across. Sky Echo has wrote a comment here, which I think will probably be the overarching theme and slogan of this campaign, and it's the quote that she wrote is "Things can only get wetter." I think that will
The Lib
basically
Dems have
be.
already said that.
Oh right.
Yeah. Oh, and Charlie in the chat said it as well. Actually.
Oh, I didn't know that, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no, but yeah, I fully endorse that as the I'm using that as the thumbnail. We're having the picture of wet Sunak with "Things can only get wetter" over the top. That's going to be the thumbnail for this stream.
Honestly, I think the thing that will be interesting about this campaign is I don't actually think both Labour or Liberal Democrats will get that much coverage. You'll get Starmer every so often saying some politician thing, but I think this campaign is basically going to be Beverly Hills theme, but the Tory party. It's just going to basically be every day is just one bad disaster of the next for them after the next. It's just not going to get any better because the fact that they are clearly not prepared for this, their MPs are not prepared for this. Rishi's not meeting with the 1922 committee, so that's going to be an interesting next few days to see how that goes.
Not meeting, I should say, refusing to meet.
Refusing to meet, yes.
They want to meet with him, and he said no.
So yeah, I honestly
would you'd say no if you were Rishi Sunak?
Yeah, so I think that the theme of this, so I think that the main thing of this campaign is not going to be
Oh, I did have
Labour
one
or
last
Liberal
tweet.
Democrats. I think it will just basically be the media will focus on the Tories' continual failure, and that will probably just make their poll lead even worse, or at best for them, just solidify it being 20 points ahead of Labour. It will be the Tory psychodrama, but broadcasted to the entire country.
Did you? I mean, I only agree with everything you've just said there.
Yeah,
By the way,
I did post one last thing for you to look at, and that's they've actually already made up a copy for tomorrow's Spectator.
It is going to be nice when Labour are in charge and the Tory psychodrama no longer decides government policy, based off
No,
of
it'll be
how many
Labour
left.
psychodrama. They'll decide
Yeah.
government policy.
But at least there won't be any psychodrama for the first 6 months.
Oh,
that'll be
that's brilliant. Oh,
the thing
sorry,
that'll
I
be
just want to
interesting
share
is-
Wet Sunak,
Go on.
Spectator one that Callum's linked to me because that's just beautiful.
But yeah, I think the Tory psychodrama, yeah, that actually sums it up pretty good, to be fair. That's what the campaign is, the deluge. Yeah, that's
just
pretty
wonderful.
accurate.
That's a Tory magazine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Spectator wouldn't endorse another party, but it's not going to miss an opportunity to absolutely
The literal former political editor is Rishi's #1 advisor.
And here's my high quality thumbnail. Things can only get better.
Yeah, that's very accurate. I mean, the thing, the deluge. I mean, the thing that is just the thing about the Tory psychodrama is I don't think it will even end after the election does when they lose.
Oh
I
no,
think
they're
that it
going
will.
to go through 3 or 4 leaders in the first year.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't. Like they're going to burn through so many leaders, and it's gonna be like what happened with Labour after Corbyn went. But the first few months after Labour lost in 2019, the Labour Party, especially the Labour left, tore itself to shreds. The same thing will happen with the Tories, but it will go on. But instead of it being like about 6 months or so, it will go on for 5 years, pretty much.
The trouble with
the question, I'll ask this very quickly of you guys before we go. Next Tory leader, is it going to be Penny Mordaunt or is it going to be someone from the Tory right?
Penny's not
Tory
horrible.
right, I think.
To be honest, it really depends on who survives.
Yeah,
that is true. There is going to be a
I
culling
think
of a lot
we
of the
can.
MPs.
I don't know how much we can reasonably expect to be the next Tory leader until actually after the election, because
I guess I need to look who's got good majorities.
My money would be on Priti Patel.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
apparently
go-
Priti
I wouldn't go
Patel and the bookie's favourite from what I've seen is either Priti Patel or Penny Mordaunt, depending on what one you look at. But yeah, I agree with Dan there. I think Priti Patel is the next leader, more than likely. I think that
she is going to be this generation's William Hague.
Yeah, I think the thing that will happen with the Tories is when they do lose, I think that the zero-seater movement will become the sort of dominant strain of thought within the Tory party. I think they will look at what has happened over the past few years, come to the conclusion that they've not been right-wing enough, and they will really double down on right-wing ultranationalism and will really go hard on that, much like what they did from 1997 to 2001 under William Hague, where they got in some proper right-wing people in the shadow cabinet.
I would
I
argue
would be
that's
surprised if they campaign on reintroducing Section 28. Like, I heard their thing about, the idea of banning sex education for, young children. Making sure that, young children can't be protected against predators. I wouldn't be surprised if they were to go further and say, do you know what? No, none of this woke nonsense. We are going to mandate that children are not allowed to learn about LGBT people. It's all spreading homosexual. They'll say they'll campaign into the next election saying we're going to ban homosexualism or something. Proper like 1970s satanic panic shit.
I would say that I think it would be better for the Tories to go right after this election. Purely
because the whole Overton window of British politics is moving right, and if they were to go full sort of satanic panic on social policy, hard right on immigration, then they would snap up all of the reform voters, which is exactly what reform wants, because all that UKIP Brexit reform is, it's a ratchet. It ratchets British politics to the right, and then it moves on to the next, and the next, and the next. And as it pulls the Tories to the right, it has to pull Labour along with it, because the Labour have shackled themselves to the Tories so that they can appear the sensible alternative.
I will say that I somewhat agree with the analysis of how those forces have moved the Tories to the right and how, to a degree, Labour's had to compensate and move with them. But I think crucially that post-election, when Labour are the ones in power, Labour are the greatest force of political gravity, and they are the ones that, in the minds of the voters, have captured the new centre ground. The Tories moving off further to the right is only going to move them further away from being electable again.
I disagree in the long term because
I disagree as well.
If they move to the
you,
right,
you disagree first, Dan, and then you can disagree.
No, sorry, I agree with Dan.
So they're not, purely because they're not going to get back in one term, okay? Because the Labour landslide is going to be massive.
Yeah, they won't get back in one term.
When they lose the next election in 2028, 2029, it's better that the dries and the hard writers lose that election, because if the wets lose in 2028, 2029, and then when they've got a chance of coming back in a decade or so, it will be the hardline writers in charge rather than the wets. So
I agree.
The hardliners have to lose in 2028, 2029, and then like Hague did, and then you move it back to the centre to try and win. If they can go to the centre and absolutely lose anyway, at the next election in 5 years' time, they'll just go. They'll want to go even further. They'll want to go really right after that.
Honestly, we're on the same page there. I'll just say quickly, if I can, sorry, and then I'll come to you, Callum. I think that they'll go right, and they will fail in going right, and then because of that, they will then compensate and end up tacking centre ultimately. It will be something of a rerun of when Labour won in '97 until you eventually got David Cameron.
I don't necessarily want to jump to that conclusion right away, because I genuinely think that there might be a situation where the Tories will institutionally eliminate the wets. As in, like they will purge the wets.
Well, they're gonna. I love purging the wets, and I just keep thinking of Sunak out in front of Downing Street.
They will purge Sunak. Well, Sunak won't bother. He might not even, once he loses, he might not even stay as an MP for the full 5 years.
The problem with Sunak is the wets and the dries. Neither of them claim him.
No, but what I mean to say is that, what will happen is, the dries, the hard, sort of hardcore Tories, ratchet towards reform's position, thus alienating the last of the sort of proper wishy-washy wet liberals in the Tory party. But importantly, they can then use their institutional control of the Conservative Party to prevent the wets from, the faux conservatives, the conservative in name only sort of wets from standing in the subsequent election. As in they'll go full Republican with the idea of no, we now control this party. Anyone who is not us, anyone who's to the left of us, cannot be allowed into our party and become exclusionary to more liberal aspects. I'm saying, what if the Tories become so integrated into their right-wing ideology that they exclude the possibility of then shifting back towards the centre after losing?
Well, that would be game over.
Disastrous for them.
Yeah, it would.
But the thing is, it seems like something that could logically happen with Patel, Braverman.
Not Pretty.
Maybe not Pretty Patel. No, she actually seems weirdly sensible now because of how far they've lurched.
She's got a political brain on her, and she's come out with some sort of more centrist for a Tory kind of stuff recently. Whereas if it was Suella or Generic,
what about Mordaunt though?
Penny's, we all view her as a wet, and
the question is, could she be the sort of, could Penny Mordaunt end up being not the William Hague, but the David Cameron of the 2020s Tories?
Well, she's got to keep her seat, which is looking very dicey at the moment. And but
I don't know.
I've said for a while the winning formula is
you live in
pretty.
Portsmouth, don't you?
Could Penny be a Portillo moment? Do you think?
Oh no, it's possible, but
it's very possible that she could, because her seat is extremely dicey. According to,
is it? I didn't think it was that close.
According to constituency polling that's been done here, and according to what the local Tories here have said, she is winning by a maximum 4%, and there is a real, genuine risk that she could lose to Labour by less than 1,000 votes come the next election. There's a real risk that could happen, and they're really worried about it.
Our activists will flood there.
Yeah, but what
We
I
love
would
we love her.
say, yeah, what I would say with this though is, I think the perspective on this is interesting, but I have my own sort of perspective on it, and it is basically this. I actually don't think the Tories will be out of power long term, and in fact, I actually could see them make a return in the 2030s and dominate the 2030s, much like they did the 1980s and the 2010s. And the reason I think that is because of this. I think that people in this country are extremely volatile when it comes to their political positioning and opinions. And the reason for that is because people here, regardless of where they fall on the political spectrum, are angry and furious. We're not like the US where we are hyper polarized. We're not. Instead, everyone is angry, but what everyone disagrees about is what they're angry about and who they blame for that.
Wait, can I advance this point?
Sure.
I think most people in Britain, generally speaking, want a government that intervenes on issues which directly affect voters. That's things like water, transport, NHS, etc. The problem is that government parties don't want to interfere with them because that might mean that they have to take a solid stance, left or right. You know, the Labour Party and the Tories don't want to appear to be interventionist governments with particularly strong positions on major sort of national industry issues and national economic issues. No one wants to actually spend the money to nationalize the water companies, for example, because of the sheer complicated mess that would be. You know, actually nationalizing the water companies, accepting their debts, taking over administration, etc. That would be a massive expense. So we're not going to do that because that would be incredibly expensive. But the problem is that British people want them to do something about it. So the parties say we will say we're going to do something about it and then not really do something about it. Same with transport, same with the NHS, same with education, same with immigration. We will say we're going to do something. We will put forward potentially credible policy proposals which will, in fact, actually do nothing because that would involve spending a huge amount of money and creating a long-term plan that outlasts one term in government. And therefore, people will continue to feel betrayed because no matter what a government says, no matter what a government does, from the perspective of an ordinary voter, X, Y, and Z hasn't meaningfully changed. Or it's gotten worse.
But the thing, what I'm saying is the reason why I think people are volatile is basically because look at what has happened in this country since the 2008 financial crisis. Every single thing, every single metric you look at has gotten significantly worse since the 2008 financial crisis. It's basically a meme on social media at this stage that UK economic development is basically good thing goes down, bad thing goes up. It's basically a meme at this stage. And recently, to reinforce that, it's been revealed that we have the highest rate of homelessness in the G7, even above the United States. That has recently come
As a
out.
proportion of
And
population.
as a proportion of the population. And what you basically see is you see a population who is extremely angry, extremely volatile, and wants something done. But the problem is that nobody in either the Labour Party, the Tory Party, the Liberal Democrats wants to do something. And
Because that
people
would
these
cost money.
days. Yeah, but the thing is though is that people these days have thoroughly lost patience now. They want something to be done, and if nothing is done, people will deal the governing party a major blow at an election. And I think that Labour will be so disappointing and will change so little that it doesn't matter what their majority is, people will turn against them and will turn
This
against them fast.
this lets me
And
tie in. This lets me tie in very nicely to me wrapping the stream up because I was going to bring on one final topic here, as I read a few comments out from the chat. So just quickly, Blue Guy had said Hunts will lose. That will be the Portillo moment. Lib Dems will win Hunt's seat. Pterodax, 100 to 130, I believe, is the realistic Tory seat numbers. NA says a lot of people will be very disappointed when they realise Starmer's Labour will instigate very little change. So final, and I do mean final, thing of the stream here. What do you think are the prospects for, Labour win power? They're in for 4 or 5 years. Do you think they'll have much to show for it at the end? Obviously,
No, I think they won't.
That's a very
And
definitive no as well.
no, and I think they won't. And in fact, I'll make the prediction here and now. Starmer's Labour will be a one-term government, and the Tories will be back in 2029. And the reason I think that is because, again, it goes back to the volatility argument. People are so angry at what I have been calling for the past few years the lost decades, where essentially we have had 20
Like Japan.
years of. Yeah, essentially, it's the same as Japan, essentially, the lost decades there, where essentially we have had 20 years of economic stagnation, and people are angry and furious about that fact, and they want it to change now. And any government that doesn't change it and continues the lost decades is going to be punished severely for doing so.
I'm actually going to disagree with you quite strongly there, Tom. I'm going to say not only am I probably more optimistic for how things will end up and be perceived at the end of a Labour term of government. For one thing, I don't immediately assume that the Tories will win power back off them again after one term. But just on the point you were making about, voters are so furious at this constant decline that they will, backlash against anyone who's in power who's perceived to have been the ones to do it. I'd say that hasn't necessarily been the case for the 14 years of Tory government, though. It's not as if we've been chopping and changing the government every election for the past 4 or 5
yes
elections.
and no. I mean, you could make the argument that we have, in the last 14 years, realistically speaking, had 4 governments.
Yeah,
well, yes, you can say there was the coalition, there was the majority Tory government, there was the minority Tory government.
I'm saying
Go on.
the Cameron government, although it was a bit different from the coalition government, was kind of liberal pro-European centrist. Then you had the sort of May into Johnson government, which was kind of pursuing Brexit, still generally speaking socially liberal, didn't want to meaningfully change much. Then the war started and kind of pro-Ukraine. Then you had the absolute nightmare of Liz Truss government, and then you have this sort of Sunak nationalist government.
I'll put it in these very simple terms as far as how I feel things, and NA points out in the chat, predicting what will happen in 4 or 5 years is foolish. Obviously,
Oh yeah, of course.
back in 2019, everyone thought Boris Johnson would steamroll through the next election, and look where we ended up there. But I'll put it in.
Okay,
I'll put it in these terms.
I have an anecdote.
I've got an anecdote. It's called my opinion. Hang on a minute. You can do yours. I'll put it in these very simple terms, right? I think that if people look just in the frame of since the last election, since 2019, do they think things are better or worse in the country than they were then? People would say that they are worse. I think that in order for the Labour government to be viewed as any kind of a success, the answer simply needs to be that things are somewhat better than they were when they took power. It doesn't need to be, or not worse. It doesn't need to be dramatically better. But as the old adage goes, things can only get better. I do think that if they can turn around at the end of 4 or 5 years in office and say, look, on our watch, we haven't had any great big crash in the economy. Growth has recovered somewhat. Inflation has stayed down. If they've just managed to do good, not amazing, not reviving our fortunes, not a new sun rising on the British Empire or any of that stuff, but just if they've managed to get in and it's not been the same kind of decline we've seen over the past few years, if it's just a bit good, all right.
My anecdote actually feeds into two things you just said.
Yeah.
One, so it was the last week before Christmas 2019. I just finished my exams in first year of university, and I was sitting with a man who I know is now an advisor to, I think, Matt Hancock. Certainly, he's a Tory MP advisor. I think he might even be a candidate in the election. Reasonably close to the Tory party.
Yeah.
And he said to me, right after the 2019 election, he said, the Tories could be in for another 10 years. All they need to do is solve the housing crisis. They just need to make a house affordable for someone in their 20s and 30s, and they would win the election. Of course, this is before COVID and everything. The point was, though, that he said that he thought the biggest problem the Tories had was the fact that people couldn't get themselves property. They couldn't put themselves into position as being someone with assets that they could have for life and pass on to their children. And I think if Labour was to really secure itself an election victory in 2028-9, would be do something where you can say people can afford to buy their own house, or we have social housing available for people to rent at a reasonable price. We've brought rent down, or something like that. You have been able to drastically improve life for people between the ages of 20 and 50. You could do that in a number of ways. You could reform the welfare state. You could scrap the bedroom tax and other sort of punitive measures against renters. And you could increase the housing stock. You could relax sort of relations with the European Union and provide cheaper food that way. If you did any of those things, you could potentially say life has not gotten worse. It might not have gone better, but it's not gotten worse. The problem is the Labour Party. The Labour Party
I see
feels
that
so
within.
bound.
I see that within the realms of possibility for the
But the
Labour
thing,
Party.
The
but the
thing is, the
thing
Labour
that
Party needs to have the courage, the balls to actually do something, to actually commit to a policy which will meaningfully change things, which will involve spending tens of billions of pounds that isn't
think-
already committed.
I think though, I'll say this much. I think that the most timid version of Starmer's Labour Party is the one that we're seeing right now. It's the one that's put away anything that could be used as ammunition against them. It's anything that's got big labels attached to it in terms of numbers of spending. They're trying to just get over the finish line into the election on very, don't expect too much from us. It's a bad situation. We'd like to do this and we'd like to do that, but we're not going to be throwing money at a bunch of stuff.
Well, another option would be just to inch over the electoral line, call an election in 3 years, and make massive public spending. Labour could potentially pull a winner by getting in with very conservative spending commitments and policy aims, and then have a very short first term, and then go in promising the world.
Yeah,
by just turning around.
Think about 97. Think about 97 with Blair. They weren't promising the world on a stick in 97. It was pretty mild, the goals that they set for themselves in 97.
Okay, the thing is with all of this, and there's many things I have to say in response to this, is all of you are ignoring the fact that these events may be completely beyond the control of Starmer. Is it may be the case that Starmer can promise all of these things and he may want to promise spending, but it may be the case that geopolitical events prevent him from doing so. And the reason for
I
that is
agree.
because
I didn't actually say that Starmer would promise any of
No,
these
but
things.
what I'm saying
this
is
what he could have potentially
But
done.
the thing I'm making is
we'll let Tom say his piece because we spoke over each other enough. Go on, Tom.
Yeah, but the thing I'm saying is that the world that we live in today is becoming significantly more geopolitically volatile thanks to things like the decline of US hegemony and the power that it has over the world. We've seen this in the Middle East more clearly than ever, but we could see it develop in other parts of the world as well. I pay attention quite a lot to what goes on with Russia and Ukraine and the Russian and Eurasian political sphere, as well as what's going on in East Asia. And there is serious, genuine concern in NATO that Putin may put Article 5 to the test by staging a small war with the Baltic states or even with Finland, because he wants to really test whether NATO will actually come to the defense of a weaker member state, because he sees NATO has greatly been divided by the situation in the Middle East. And then there's also China versus Taiwan. If war does indeed happen between China and Taiwan, which is a real possibility within the next 3 years, according to what both people in Taiwan and the United States claim, that will crash the entire global economy, because the semiconductor market will be destroyed, because Taiwan makes 60% of the world's semiconductors and 92% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. If even just one of these things happen, oh, and the Middle East war may also expand, which will severely disrupt trade in the Suez Canal as well as the oil trade in the Strait of Hormuz. If even one of these things happen, the Russia-NATO war, the China-Taiwan war, the regional Middle Eastern war, if even one of these things happen, it will negatively impact Britain's economy in such a way that it will make the war in Ukraine look like a picnic in comparison. And I think if one of these things does happen, and there is a very real chance that at least one of them could happen, all of Starmer's plans, even if he wanted to be ambitious, would just crumble before his very eyes. And again, the volatility argument would be is that they would all, as people would turn against him very, very quickly. And even if these things do not happen, I simply don't believe Starmer will be anywhere near remotely radical to get him re-elected, because there are so many vested interests in the Labour Party with landlords and big business donors and very rich people that I think even if he wanted to do anything, they will constrain him in such a way that he just won't be able to do what he wants.
I'll give a response in saying that, first of all, probably as both of you have thought, it's like there's so many things that you want to say in reply to all this, but I am keen to end the stream at this point. I will say that I certainly agree as far as external factors go, as far as the geopolitical situation goes, there you're right. There is a hell of a lot simmering out there that could come along and blow up and derail any plans that we've got domestically. As much as we've joked about, Sunak, it's a dangerous world out there.
Yeah,
It is.
the only solution
It is a dangerous world out there.
Starmerism in one country.
But
oh, by the way, one thing I just wanted to quickly say to
go on.
Before I want to say, by the way, with the Taiwan thing, to reinforce the point further, you've had Taiwanese businesses, in particular TMSC, which is the main Taiwan semiconductor industry, moving their businesses to Japan and South Korea in preparation for potential future conflict, which is what NA in the comments section here has pointed out. And that is true. And the fact that you've got businesses in Taiwan moving their operations to Japan and South Korea really, and the US as well, really does show that people in Taiwan don't think the risk of a China war is non-existent. They do think it's very possible, and they've been preparing for it a hell of a lot more in recent years than they have in the past. And China's only getting
France is becoming a lot more hawkish.
Oh, big time.
Yeah, that's another thing as well, is that France may also decide that if the war in Ukraine deteriorates even further and it's getting worse, France and Macron in particular may decide that the war has now reached an existential crisis for Europe and will have to intervene in order to defend Ukraine. And if that happens, then all bets are off the table, because Putin will very easily see that as the beginning of the NATO-Russia war, because it's a NATO nuclear-armed country going to war with a nuclear-armed state. So,
And also, not to also overstate the fact that, France is now in a proxy war with Azerbaijan.
yes, that's another thing as
And
well.
Azerbaijan being sort of this weird kind of country that is both a NATO ally and also well, I don't know if it's like Russia, but like Azerbaijan sits in this weird crossroads of being kind of supported by the West, but also supported by the East, so to speak, and yet is now in a proxy war with with France.
So yeah, that's basically
Azerbaijan is basically the same as Turkey. It's very, very similar position. The pro West, but they also have affiliation with Russia.
Yeah.
But yeah, basic. By the way, the company I named, the Taiwan company, is called TSMC, not TMSC. But yeah, TSMC. But either way, the overall point I'm making is that even if Starmer wants to be more radical than he portrays himself to be, which I personally don't think he is, and I don't think he is because of all them vested interests I mentioned before, I honestly think that the world that we live in, the 2020s will be one of the most geopolitically volatile decades in history, probably since the interwar period, and there is no sign.
This is like the 1920s.
Yeah, and there's no sign of it improving anytime soon whatsoever. In fact, it seems like many leaders and many military commanders, both within NATO and NATO's enemies, have essentially the belief that war between NATO, Russia, and even China is not a matter of if, but a matter of when. So
It's as if we're in a situation now, because I've heard time and time again us being described as in a pre-war era
Actually,
at the moment.
no, we're not in the 1920s.
I feel like the best case
We're in the
scenario is almost
1900s.
the best
You
case
know-
scenario is almost that we end up in another Cold War rather than another hot war.
No, but I just realized we are in the Anglo-German Cold War of the 1900s.
yeah, and the
like,
thing is, as
like the
well,
build
is
up
that
towards the Balkan Wars in
yeah, and the thing
1913.
Yeah, and the other thing as well is there's so many flashpoints in the world, and it may even be the case that there may be a conflict brewing out there that emerges that no one sees coming. I mean, no one saw what happened in the Middle East coming. I mean, Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor of the US, infamously said 1 week before all hell broke loose there that the Middle East had never been so peaceful. Now look at what it's like. So I honestly think that even if Starmer wanted to do anything with regards to investment, he may not have the chance to, and the economy may deteriorate rapidly. And if that happens, voters are not going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I mean, they haven't given the Tories the benefit of the doubt with all these crises, because to steel man the Tories here and defend them, a lot of what has happened hasn't been their fault. I mean, yeah, they haven't helped themselves whatsoever, but it's not the
Position we were
Tories.
in before these things happened was weak.
Yeah, the position we were in was weak and they made it that way. But in fairness to the Tories, nobody knew that a pathogen in central China was going to emerge into a global pandemic that swept the world. And no one
fifth deadliest in
thought.
history.
But
Yeah,
I will say on that though, that in as much as COVID coming along was nothing that the Tories were responsible for, the Tories were doing pretty well in terms of public support with COVID up until Partygate, and Partygate was Boris Johnson's own doing.
Yeah, it was their own hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the other thing as well, and even then, COVID was only one of the things that made them bad. The thing that really harmed them because of the energy prices and inflation was the war in Ukraine. And to put it simply, there was nothing the Tories could have done to stop that. No one could have predicted that Putin would have been insane enough to go and march into Ukraine to conquer it with the goal of eventually re-establishing the Soviet Union. That wasn't
Russian
the
Empire.
Russian Empire, but that wasn't the Tories' fault. They didn't know that was going to happen because no one did. And that's the point I'm making, is that the situation the world is in right now is so volatile that so many events are beyond the control of our government that they may be forced into situations that they don't want to be forced in, but they are in. And the people of this country, because of the 20 years of stagnation, are not giving any government any benefit of the doubt.
I wanted to add also that I have a friend who's in His Majesty's Intelligence Corps, and let's just say I don't know how much I can actually say, but like he gave me some vague statements saying everyone should actually have their eyes on Kosovo. And I'm sure many people know that the Kosovar situation is deteriorating. But he said that essentially, if you're not paying attention to Kosovo, then you really should. There's shit going on there that even like let's just say British Special Operations is preparing for something in Kosovo.
Yeah, I've heard about what's going on there. There have been increasing...
and that we could have another Balkan war on our hands.
Yeah, there's been increasing concerns that Serbia has been, and Russia as well, have been
My
funding.
understanding was that they're prepared for a potential uprising, which could then lead to the Serbs saying, "Look, Serb people in Kosovo are in danger. We're going to invade it as a peacekeeping force," which in a sense is just an invasion.
Guys,
To further add on,
guys,
just quickly.
I just want to say, yeah, there's never really going to be a good time for me to cut you off and end the stream, because undoubtedly we could go on indefinitely with this, but I'm going to choose now as we come up to the 3-hour mark.
The point is that the British government's hands are going to be tied by
I accept
geopolitical situation.
No, I very much accept that point, and I think that's a very fair point to make.
I think that's where we should end.
The amount of shit that's going on out there. There are so many unforeseen, or indeed foreseen, the known knowns and the unknown, the known
let's not get into that shit again.
To get Rumsfeldian on all of you. No, but I completely agree with that. I think there's differences in our interpretation of how much the public would blame an incumbent government on them, how successful a Labour government would be at implementing stuff, where it would be seen as radical or not. But we can get into all of that, because you know what? We've got a month and a half to go until the general election. We're going to be here plenty over the next few weeks. I'm absolutely certain of it. I just want to say thank you very much to you guys who've joined me for this stream here today. Indeed, those of you that were here earlier on but no longer with us now. And you lot in the chat as well, who've been here for this 3-hour marathon stream. Thank you very much for all your comments and contributions. As always, I'm sorry that I've probably not read as many of them out as I'd like to, but I hope you'll forgive me this time around, at least, that we've had quite a lot of guests on, and it's been a while since some of us have got together and chatted. I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to be making this video, that video, this stream, that stream, etc. Other than to say there's going to be a lot of content on the channel in the next few weeks. Obviously, with a general election campaign going on, I'll hopefully be getting a lot of these guys back on again to speak to. We'll have a few streams where it's just me as well. You might even get me making a few, I don't know, political music videos for the channel. I'll be cranking out all sorts of stuff over the next little while.
Are you going to try and redo that Theresa May video you did 7 years ago that went viral?
Oh, the viral might be a little bit generous, but the
you know the one I'm talking about.
The Dead Island Brexit trailery type one.
Try and do a Dead Island Keir Starmer.
I don't know if I'm going to tack specifically to Dead Island, but I've definitely got I definitely have ideas all the time when I'm listening to music, thinking about, right, oh, here's a song that I could set some things to if I find the right clips and hook for it, blah blah blah. So I might try and come up with something. Blue Guy says a lot of content equals maybe one stream. Well, you'll see. I'll put it this way: if there's ever a time that you're going to get a lot of streaming from me, a general election is going to be it. There's no other time than a GE.
By the way, I just wanted to say that it's been confirmed for the Labour shortlist for Islington North has been confirmed, and Paul Mason is not on the shortlist.
I think we had that in the chat earlier. I forgot to read it, but poor Paul Mason.
No people's bomb.
No
people's
indeed.
bomb. All right then.
I'm surprised.
So Callum, Dan, Tom, Cameron, is that all? Cameron, Callum, Tom, Dan. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much for joining me for this one, guys. It's been great to have you all on again. I appreciate it. And again, as I say, you lot in the chat. And if you haven't already, please do drop the stream a like. This is probably a good as time as any to try and grow the channel if I'm actually making content. And likes help with the YouTube algorithm, or so I hear. Other than that, I will see you guys all again very soon. Strap in, folks, because it's happening. The general election is coming. See you all later.
See you all later. Goodbye.